The woman called Melody to her, calling her her daughter. She noted that on the way to the auction, she discovered an overturned carriage. Mom remarked that she was very lucky today, and it was true. Dressed to match an aristocrat, the girl was sitting on a chair. Her mother found this girl alone in the carriage. Well, Mother didn't understand what was happening to Melody and why she looked as if she wasn't happy. There is no more hope. She lived until the events of the novel. With the onset of the 11th spring, the first chapter of this story began, which the main character did not want at all. Their first meeting set the events of the novel in motion. Mother said that she would sew a new dress from these fabrics, and if there was anything left, she would give it to Melody. Melody pointed out that it was dangerous to wear aristocratic clothes, because anyone could recognize them in those clothes. But her mother said they had a lot of these clothes in their attics. Melody thought their daughter might be an only child, but her mother said she didn't know. However, she thinks that aristocrats have enough children to store them in attics as well. In any case, the girl will remain in her room so that she doesn't do anything funny. Her mother won't take her eyes off her. Melody agreed. This girl was from the overturned carriage, a beautiful, sweet blonde girl. I remember in a past life, when the main character was 5 years old, she told her mother that she had a nightmare. She only cried and was afraid. In her world, no one smiled at her, and she was always alone. Mother said that she was always full of things to do. Fortunately, she gradually managed to cope with this flower. From the remaining memories of her past life, it is clear that her path now is no different from last year, when she turned 10. The fragments of memories began to come together. Every night she read the novel, watching the plots hovering above her head. In them, she became independent already at the age of 15. She had to work hard to earn money. Compared to her peers and adults, her entire appearance, down to the tips of her old pair of shoes, testified to her dire situation. And so she hoped that someone would appear who could cheer her up. But no one came. Yet she found solace in books. They really helped her relax. She liked one story that was popular among girls. It was a novel. The title of the book was strange. The Duke has 3 sons and a daughter, 4 children in total. However, the denouement and happy ending were very good, and she enjoyed rereading it many times, and Melody quickly fell in love with the novel, because the memories and feelings described there were very similar to her own. All the characters were well thought out, but the main character's childhood story was most intertwined with her life. One day, the 5-year-old main character, Loretta, got into an accident in which she lost her parents. An evil slave trader kidnapped the girl and brought her to her house, where she first met her daughter, the antagonist, who treated her harshly, causing readers to feel anger and sympathy for the main character. The last event in the first chapter was the Duke's arrival in the capital. He convicted the criminals, and they were never seen again. But Melody couldn't enjoy the story because she looked so much like the villain. The novel is interesting, but one day its contents came to life. Names of places, names of aristocrats, and also her personality. She is the daughter of a slave trader who will be punished by the Duke. Her name was Melody, but her mother didn't understand how she dared to say such a thing to her, since she had so much work to do. Melody said that if she didn't stop trafficking, she would be in big trouble. Mother said that if she intended to continue saying whatever she wanted, she had better get out of her house immediately. Melody couldn't convince her evil mother, so she was left with only one way to survive. She decided that she would become friends with the main character, and then she would break fate, and will be able to avoid the Duke's punishment. It's easy to say, but there really is a problem with this. Her mother doesn't allow her to do it. She noted that one shouldn't pay attention to her. There's no need to bring her food. Mother plans to send her to a place where living conditions will be much more painful, so she better get used to it. But then the mother turned around and said that it would be nice if this girl at least said thank you. Melody approached the girl and said that she saw her necklace. She hoped she was pronouncing her name correctly, but the girl didn't pay attention to her. She was scared, so Melody decided to leave the food here. She said she brought soup and hoped she would eat it. First, she should have some food, and there is no need to frighten her even more. The girl smelled food and paid attention. After a while, she gradually approached the food. Melody noticed how happy the girl was about the food. She realized that she was lucky, and the first contact took place. But when the girl noticed that Melody was looking at her, she immediately became scared. So far, everything is far from ideal. But over time, Perhaps everything will change. Melody called her over and told her she could sleep in her bed. It's easier to fall asleep on it than on my mother's hard sofa. But the girl didn't answer her in any way. Melody felt sorry for her because she was really scared and in a strange place. Melody didn't understand why this little girl had to go through such hardships. But after that, the girl still went and lay down in bed. She was still crying and she was really scared here. Melody turned to her and asked if she was okay. But the girl hid even more under the blanket. Then Melody realized that to her, she was just a villain. She understood that it would be very difficult to make friends with her. The next day, Melody came to bring something to drink, and she was surprised that Loretta was sitting quietly and not trying to run away or hide. This is a sign that she has opened up to her at least a little. But her thoughts were interrupted by her mother, who quickly called her to her. She said the milk was still hot, so the girl should blow on it before drinking. And after that, she went to her mother. She also looked at the girl to see how she reacted to the milk. In the evening, it started to rain, and the sky became cloudy. Melody hoped there would be no lightning, because Loretta might get scared. Melody heard a knock on her room and went to see who was there. Loretta was behind the door, and she was glad when she saw her. But she also noticed that the girl came late today. Loretta threw herself into her arms. Melody didn't understand what was happening. The girl hid under the blanket, and Melody believed that it was her mother who had offended the girl. She didn't understand what to do or what had happened. She opened the window and noted that a breath of fresh air should help. She called Loretta to her and told her to look at the leaves swirling in the wind. But this made the girl even more scared. And Melody said that she had already closed the window. She didn't understand what to do and why she was so afraid. She remembered her mother's words about finding an overturned carriage on the way to the auction. It was raining that day too, so Loretta is probably scared because of that. Melody tried to do everything to make herself feel good. Melody walked up to Loretta and asked if she was scared. She noted that she was also afraid of thunder and lightning, so she covered her ears when she heard them, not even imagining that what had happened to her in her past life caused this fear. If you close your ears tightly, you can't hear anything, but she knows how to deal with it. The girl crawled out from under the blanket and tried to cover her ears too. Melody took her hand to show her. She put her hands on her ears and showed that it was almost impossible to hear. She said that Loretta might do this to avoid hearing loud noises. Melody thought she was going to feel better now. The rain doesn't make such a loud noise now. Loretta was still a little sad and said she could still hear a little. After that, they went to bed to sleep. Melody turned to her and stroked her head. She said that everything would definitely be fine. The first chapter ended quickly, but the girl did not understand what she was talking about. Melody said she meant that the girl would be happy very soon. There is nothing to be afraid of. It is better to go to bed now. The men told the Lord that they had found her in a humble place. The gentleman immediately told them to prepare the horses. They were leaving there immediately. Melody gave paper and pencils to Loretta. The girl was very happy when she managed to write the name Melody. Melody was delighted and said that she had done it very beautifully, and she said that she would reward her with pancakes for this. Loretta said she was very happy when Melody was around. Melody suggested playing house after they learned their letters. Loretta suggested that she be the little sister, and Melody would be the little one. She always gives her the role of the youngest child. You need to find out if something is bothering her. Melody wondered who would be the mother in that case, and the girl noted that she didn't know who her mother was. The novel never stated that Loretta lost her memories of her mother. The girl asked Melody how to read the word under the picture. It said mansion, and it was written very beautifully. Melody would like to play hide-and-seek there, and noted that Loretta would soon return to such a beautiful house. Loretta asked again what it meant that she would come back. Melody noted that she would return to where she lived before, and the girl assumed that Melody would go with her. But Melody had to answer that her home was here. Loretta started crying because they wouldn't be together. Of course, Melody is the villain's daughter, and she noted that Loretta would return to her family. Loretta began to cry and ask who would cover her ears in the terrible carriage. Melody was surprised that she was afraid of the carriage and asked her not to cry. Melody's mother came into the room and told them to shut up because Melody was already grown up and well-fed. She could handle it herself. She also turned to Loretta and said that if she squeaked again, she would get it from her. She doesn't have a single day of peace in this house. Melody was worried about this because the girl could get very scared. When Mom came out, Melody asked Loretta if she was okay. Loretta replied that she didn't want to live where Melody wasn't. After that, Melody hugged her and tried to comfort her. Sometime later, an autumn morning dawned. Mother called Melody. She said she had good news. This girl is a real lucky girl. She is their money bag with shiny gold coins. Besides, you have to be careful. If Loretta even sneezes, that person might reject her. Mother asked Melody why she was silent and decided that she had become stupid from being around Loretta. Melody replied that she was not stupid. After these words, her mother became even more angry. She asked who she was snapping at and walked up to her to hit her. Melody immediately began to cover herself with her hands. Because of all this, the hot soup fell on her feet and spilled. Loretta was scared that Melody had burned her feet. Loretta immediately got out of her chair and asked if Melody was okay. Melody told the girl to be careful, but she slipped on the soup and fell. The fall injured her legs. Melody was horrified that she had hit herself so hard. Melody's mother immediately called her a fool and ordered her to run for the doctor. If she's left with a scar, she'll just tear her to pieces. In such a heavy rain, Melody went to look for a doctor. She hoped that her mother would not scold Loretta, and she wondered what would happen if the scar remained. What if the Duke punishes her even more severely for harming her daughter? And suddenly, this affects her future. Because she was in such a hurry, she fell and slipped. If Melody hadn't gotten close to Loretta, if she hadn't contradicted her mother, Melody believed that everything happened because of her. But now was not the time to sit in the mud, so she stood up. Now was not the time to be sad. She would not allow Loretta to be made unhappy. We must hurry. The doctor's house is very close. The coachman passed by and noticed that someone ran through the bushes. He thought he saw a child run past. The Duke also noticed this, and the coachman said that in such a downpour, it was unlikely to be a child. They say this forest is very creepy and anything can happen here. He told the Lord to wait a little longer, because they would arrive soon. The woman heard someone knocking, so she went over to ask who was there. When she heard the girl's voice, she became scared. She opened the door and was horrified to see a dirty and wet Melody standing behind it. The doctor immediately treated her wounds, but Melody told her not to worry about her. The lady doctor was very angry and said that she had already warned her mother that if she got drunk again and offended her, she would have to deal with the guards. Melody asked if the doctor could come to her house quickly. She said that the girl is there now. She has a broken knee after a fall. And the lady realized that Melody was talking about the child that her mother had brought. If she helps her, she could become an outcast in the village for helping a slave trader. This bothered her, so she thought about it, and Melody pointed out that it was her fault. Loretta slipped on the soup she had spilled, but the doctor said that she would return soon, ride a horse, and Melody should stay and warm herself by the fire, throwing a blanket over herself. But the girl did not agree, and said that if she was not there, Loretta would be scared because she was afraid of the rain. Melody tried to explain that this girl needed her, so they set off together on horseback. Melody noted that they were almost there, just a little bit left. But the doctor said that if they came closer, they would be in danger, because there were already carriages there. The doctor immediately realized that something was wrong, and she asked Melody if she saw a carriage in front of her house. Melody looked and saw a knight's carriage standing nearby. The carriage itself most likely belongs to an aristocrat. A rainy autumn day is the time when Loretta must return home. The doctor said that it would be better for them to go to her for now. Melody noted that she was putting herself in danger if she began to shelter her. But the doctor told her to be quieter, and her mother committed a crime, and she shouldn't become involved in it. Thanks to Madame, Dr. Melody will be able to avoid a terrible punishment. But his time with Loretta was over, and Loretta will return to a happy family life, towards a life with new, better, and wealthier people. Melody should be happy for her, but her heart ached for her. Suddenly, they heard their mother screaming to be let go. They immediately became frightened and saw the woman fall face down on the ground. She will be sent to the central prison. It's getting colder outside, so it's time to go back to the doctor's house. The next day, the doctor prepared food, and she said that it was very good that Melody didn't catch a cold. Last night, she was very worried because the girl seemed about to lose consciousness. Suddenly, Melody heard someone calling her, but she imagined it. She looked and saw that there was no one there. The doctor said she thought it would be better for Melody to stay with her for now. Why doesn't she study medicine instead of her son? Her son Isaiah left home, saying that he was going to become a knight. His room is empty, so if she stays, it will be easier for her to keep an eye on it. It's safer here than alone in an empty house. Melody thought he was a bad son, not at all interested in his mother's life. The girl said that this does not mean that she does not want it, and she is very grateful for the help and care. But she would like the doctor to give her a little time to think about it. After that, she went to her home, where real horror was happening. There weren't even any clothes left. She thinks that her mother took the savings as soon as she saw the guards, and she was probably drunk when they arrived. She will be severely punished, and Melody will never meet that girl again. It was worth at least saying goodbye and telling her about the danger that awaited her. They had such a good time together that Melody forgot about everything. She gave her nothing in return. If only for a moment she could hear her voice. Then everything would be different. Suddenly, she heard a girl behind her tell her to stop crying. Turning back, she saw Loretta. Loretta asked him to tell her who made Melody cry. Then she would hit him. The girl didn't understand what was happening, why she was right in front of her. Loretta asked Melody not to cry, and she felt better in her arms. Melody asked Loretta if it was really her. Loretta confirmed this, and Melody asked why she was there. She laughed and cried at the same time, so she started hiccuping. The Duke came out from behind, and Loretta asked if everything was okay. Melody confirmed this and was handed a bottle of water. The Duke said that there was water there, and that she would feel better if she drank it. He remarked that she must be the daughter of a slave trader. Melody realized that this man was her father. This is the Duke of the World Kingdom. He noticed that it seemed that her hiccups had gone away after drinking water. It was Wayne Baldwin, and she immediately realized she needed to apologize and fell to her knees. She began to ask for forgiveness, but the Duke calmly asked what was the matter. She apologized for her mother and for what she did to his daughter, but he said she had broken the law, and the punishment for the crime will be appropriate. Melody began to think that if she hadn't come home, she wouldn't have caught anyone's eye. But he told her not to worry because he would send someone to find out about the sentence that would be given to her mother. Melody asked what about her punishment. He asked if she helped her mother with her business, but Melody calmly denied it, since she had never been involved in it. He noticed that her mother was talking about a little daughter who supposedly needed to be constantly fed and provided for. Melody quickly realized that her mother had simply lied to gain pity and gain more benefits. The Duke said that everything was clearly exaggerated, but they would still give her housing, although they would not assign guards to her. He ordered her to follow him, intending to take her to the infirmary of the capital's temple, where aristocrats were usually served. The Duke actually showed her unexpected mercy, which seemed almost unusual in such a situation. It was all because she cared about his daughter. But if she accepted the award, everything would change. Then she would never be able to see Loretta again, and this thought troubled her more than anything else. Loretta asked Melody if they would now live in separate houses and stop seeing each other. Melody came closer to her and gently asked her not to cry, trying to stay calm. Loretta said that she loved her very much, putting all her sincerity and childish affection into these words. She asked if Melody loved her as much, hoping to hear the same warm answer. The girl came closer to her and carefully took her face, looking straight into her eyes with trust. Melody took her hands and mentally replied that she loved her too, trying to convey this without words. She reaffirmed her feelings once again, making it clear that this affection was also very important to her. Loretta was truly delighted by this. Her mood instantly became brighter and more joyful. She turned to the gentleman and called him a silly walking luck, not hiding her childish spontaneity. When she did this, she looked incredibly cute, without even realizing how it sounded from the outside. She didn't understand the meaning of her words, and Melody decided to explain that this was what her mother called profitable people. Yesterday, Loretta cried because she felt scared and uneasy being alone without Melody. Melody admitted that she cried too, because Loretta was taken away, and it was hard for her to cope with it. Loretta said that Melody was a child too, and so it was perfectly normal to cry in such a situation. Loretta then turned to her father and declared that she wanted to stay and live with Melody. It was her first real request, made with complete seriousness and confidence. She wanted him to bring the slave trader's daughter to the estate and allow them to be together. The Duke knew he could not refuse Loretta, given her condition and strong desire. Last night, she threw a tantrum because Melody wasn't around, and it really worried him. After some time, the Duke asked what Melody herself thought about all this and what decision she would make. Melody was confused and didn't immediately understand what to answer. because the choice seemed too difficult. If she becomes a doctor, she can become better than her mother and change her destiny. She had already escaped punishment because she knew from the book what could happen to her next. She also knew the fate of this girl, and this knowledge greatly influenced her decision. She remembered all the hardships and happy moments that awaited Loretta, as if it were part of her memory. Melody decided that she had to provide Loretta with the best possible future, no matter what. For the first time, she had something that only she could give, and it gave her determination. So she turned to the gentleman and made it clear that she wanted to go with Loretta. Mrs. Merlin began to worry, because Melody had not returned for too long, and this was alarming. After some time, Melody finally came running to her, out of breath but determined. She informed Mrs. Merlin that she had something important to tell her without delay. The doctor could not believe that the girl was going to go to the capital with the Duke, because it was dangerous. She understood that Melody was good, but she was not sure about the Duke himself and his intentions. However, Melody was confident that many in the capital would side with the Duke and support him. The doctor nevertheless decided to rely on her choice, realizing that the girl had already made her final decision. Melody was truly grateful that she was allowed to live in Isaiah's room and given a chance. Mrs. Merlin remarked that it was not worthwhile to put her in the boys' room, because it was cold and not at all comfortable there. She said that if life in the capital turns out to be difficult, Melody can return at any time, because everyone needs a home. She also added that she had a small request for Melody and hoped that she could fulfill it. If Melody meets her son, she must give him the pot of sweets that Mrs. Merlin carefully kept. In the end, she blessed her for a good future, sincerely wishing that everything would work out as well as possible for the girl. Meanwhile, a carriage had already pulled up to the house, ready to set off with them without any unnecessary delays. The boys were indignant, because for the fourth day in a row, they were served dried meat, and they considered it a mockery. If they had known that there was only harsh service here without any comforts, they would never have agreed to come here. However, one of them noted that for a simple night, even such food was considered a real luxury. Soon they saw a boy with red hair, Isaiah, who, as usual, ate much more than the others. They noted that everything was as usual, but suddenly he threw the spoon strangely, and everyone decided that he had a stomachache. But he only said that his ears were burning again, as if someone was remembering him at that moment. After some time, Melody woke up, slowly recovering from the journey. She rubbed her eyes and mentally apologized for falling asleep, without noticing how time had passed. The Duke said that there was nothing to worry about, since they had almost reached their destination. He also noted that Melody seemed to like his daughter very much, and it was obvious. Melody admitted that she was really pleased to hear this, because she had become genuinely attached to the girl. After this, she turned to the gentleman, hinting that she wanted to say something important, but was unsure whether it was worth it. She carefully mentioned that Loretta didn't seem to remember what had happened to her earlier. When Melody asked about her life before meeting her, the girl replied that she knew nothing about it. She didn't even remember her mother, her mistress, as if those memories had completely disappeared. But the fear of the sound of rain remained, meaning the incident had left a mark, and Melody did not ask any more questions. The gentleman said that she would need time to recover, and thanked Melody for her story. Melody thought it was hard for him to hear this as a father, but he admitted that he wasn't sure she was his daughter. Melody was sure of the opposite, because they were very similar even in appearance, and it was obvious. She believed that only a loved one could bring the girl here and take such good care of her. Besides their appearance, Melody noticed that they were similar on the inside too, as if their personalities echoed each other. She asked if the Duke didn't feel happy just watching Loretta sleep peacefully. It seemed to her that such a sight could evoke warm feelings in any person. Melody thought of it as an attachment to a character whose fate was already known in advance. While they were riding, a messenger caught up with them and informed them that the Duke was urgently wanted in his community. This was not surprising, since he had been absent for a whole month, and a lot of important matters had accumulated. He ordered the girls to be taken to the estate, and he himself decided to go to his superiors. The girls were met at the gate by servants, ready to carry out the order and escort them inside. The butler said that the gentleman had warned them about a month's absence and ordered that the guests be greeted properly. The housekeeper stood nearby, and together they led the girls into the mansion, keeping an eye on things. Loretta took Melody's hand and anxiously made it clear that she was afraid of being left without her. Melody tried to calm her down, showing that he would definitely return soon and would not leave her for long. Loretta was led further, assured that there was nothing to worry about, as they were almost at the entrance. Melody thought how sweet Loretta was and felt a warm affection for her. Suddenly, the housekeeper approached her and coldly called her a dirty girl, not hiding her hostility. She sharply asked why she was standing idle and ordered her to come down immediately. Melody was confused, not understanding where she could wash herself properly in such conditions. The housekeeper told her to hurry, adding that otherwise the girl might catch a cold and cause problems. When Melody touched the water, she got burned because it was too hot and unpleasant. She had to add cold water to make it even washable. The housekeeper noticed this and sharply asked why she was doing this, not hiding her irritation. The girl didn't understand what exactly was wrong and why she couldn't just add cold water without permission. The housekeeper said that she could tell it was hot because she was too thin and shouldn't be lifting heavy things. Now the temperature was suitable, and she was allowed to safely get into the water without fear of getting burned. The housekeeper added that she could sit in the water for as long as needed, without rushing or worrying. The girl noted to herself that she had not swum in such warm and pleasant water for a long time. The housekeeper looked in her direction carefully, as if assessing her condition and appearance. She asked to see her back, noticing an unpleasant smell, and decided to add medicinal herbs to the water. The girl was grateful, and the housekeeper noted that she was still little and would quickly learn, allowing herself to be called Auntie. Loretta was absolutely delighted when she saw Melody. Her face immediately lit up with joy. Melody said that her aunt gave her this shirt, and it turned out to be very comfortable. Loretta said that her little sister was the most beautiful, and then they remembered a delicious dinner with meat stew. The food was delicious, but it was already time for bed, and they decided to continue the conversation tomorrow in the garden. Loretta asked if she could stay there, and Melody indicated that her aunt had given them permission to sleep together. Loretta was truly grateful that Melody was there for her and didn't leave her alone. Suddenly, I heard footsteps, and it seemed like my aunt had arrived, so I had to get up. But it turned out to be a boy who rudely declared that she was unpleasant, thin, and did not look like a member of the Baldwin family. He also didn't understand why she was sleeping here and not in her own quarters, as was customary. He usually didn't come in the mornings, but now he was outraged that she hadn't even woken up. Then Melody realized that this must be Loretta's second brother, the one she had heard about. It was Ronnie Baldwin. He looked at his watch and was visibly indignant at what was happening. He decided that if he pinched Loretta, she would wake up, and he wanted to test it right now. After that, he was about to scream, but Melody quickly grabbed his hand, not letting him do so. She gestured for him to be quiet and not disturb the sleeping girl. The boy was confused and even a little scared by such an unexpected turn of events. He quickly pulled his hand away and asked what she was doing and why she was interfering. He was so frightened by the surprise that he lost his balance and fell to the floor. He didn't understand at all where this girl came from and why she was acting so confident. But when he looked up at her, he noticed that she was sincerely worried about him. She extended her hand to him, indicating that he should rise, and silently asked if he was hurt. The boy said that they were all the same and came here, lying, just to get into the house. Melody didn't understand his words, and he continued to speak incoherently, claiming that it was all a lie. He believed that people were constantly bringing strangers into this house, and that it only made things worse. After that, he turned sharply and walked out, loudly slamming the door behind him. Melody realized that he didn't like her, although she expected their feud to start later. Loretta woke up from the noise and sleepily tried to understand what was happening around her. Melody addressed her respectfully and asked if she had slept well the night before. Loretta noticed that this kind of address sounded strange and unusual, making her feel awkward. Melody explained that this was the right thing to do, as she was now to be considered Miss Loretta. A few days later, the Duke received a letter from the elder, which he had been expecting for a long time. He read it carefully, but was suddenly distracted by Melody running up to him. Loretta expressed her desire to grow as tall as the Duke, looking at him with genuine admiration. The Duke sent away the servant and asked what had prompted the girl to want it so, and what had inspired her to this aspiration. He then asked Loretta if she had enjoyed her breakfast and she confidently confirmed that it had been delicious. Loretta admitted that she ate everything to grow as tall as the Duke, and this made her very happy. He replied that he would only be glad to see her like this, supporting the girl's aspirations and her small goals. At that moment, the maid came up and said that the miss had not yet finished combing her hair and that she needed to wait a little. The maids immediately apologized for not being able to keep Loretta in place and monitor her actions. The Duke ordered the girl to put a coat on, as it was cool in the house and she could easily catch a cold. After this, the Duke thought for a moment, assessing the situation around him and thinking about his next steps. He decided that all sharp and slippery objects needed to be removed so that children could run around the house safely. The butler took up the task, and the Duke asked if there had been a response from the temple to their previous request. The butler reported that there was no answer yet, only news that the high priest was busy and that he would have to contact them again. They decided to increase the donations as planned, and the Duke headed to his office for business matters. The butler remarked that it was worth asking if the Duke would like to see his daughter, since she had not seen him for a long time. He assumed that Melody was currently reading Loretta a story, and the girl was completely absorbed in this activity. But the Duke replied that he had too much work, so the butler would go to the girl instead of him. One maid told another that she would not be going into town for some time for a known reason. The girl was amazed and noted that they were always proud of serving the Duke and considered it a great honor. The maid added that one of the servants asked how it was possible to work for the Baldwins and take care of a child. She asked directly if it was surprising that the Duke's missing wife suddenly gave birth to a child 6 years ago. In fact, no one knows for sure whether Loretta is the Duke's real daughter or whether it is just a rumor. The Duke himself did not show her any particular affection, and the maids did not understand why they had to suffer because of other people's affairs. Loretta was delighted to see how many delicious things had been prepared, especially for her and her enjoyment. She asked if she could eat it all, and the maids confirmed that it was all meant for her only. Loretta decided not to leave a crumb, and then the maid turned to her with a new, unexpected question. The maid asked Loretta if she was curious to know if the Duke was really her real father. The question was asked directly, without any hints, which seemed quite unexpected and abrupt for the girl. Another maid was unhappy with this conversation and hastened to intervene, trying to soften the situation. But Loretta calmly stated that she was completely sure of it and did not doubt it for a second. The maid became a little nervous and decided to ask again, not expecting such a confident and decisive answer. She asked who had told her about this, assuming that it might have been the priest who had explained everything. The girl replied that Melody told her, and she completely trusted her words and instructions. The maid noted that no one believed this, and the confession had to be confirmed by the priest, who considered it obligatory. But she added that this is not the main thing. It is important to do good deeds and attract attention to yourself. The Duke's daughter was entitled to a room on the second floor, and getting there was considered a great success and honor. Loretta tried not to listen to her words and simply asked for more sweets, completely distracted from the conversation. The maid then asked how Loretta would feel if Melody were suddenly in danger or trouble. If Melody cannot prove her origin to the priest, she could be thrown into prison with dangerous and cruel people. Hearing this, Loretta was horrified and could not calmly accept such words. Her heart beat anxiously. In the evening, she turned to Melody with a request to teach her to do good deeds and act correctly. Melody thought about the request and asked again if it was really that important and significant for Loretta. She decided to start simple and said the first step was to take a deep breath and focus. Then breathe out calmly, and this is enough to start doing something good, slowly and calmly. The girl was surprised that she could please the Duke even by simply breathing and without taking any action. Melody noticed that Loretta was beautiful, even when she was just breathing and being herself without effort. The girl told how in the garden, the maid said that Loretta must please the Duke at any cost. She added that she had to be acknowledged as a daughter, otherwise something bad might happen to Melody, and this worried her. Loretta was determined not to let that happen, but Melody gently made it clear that there was no need to worry and everything would be fine. Loretta didn't know how to behave, because she sincerely wanted to get closer to the Duke and earn his attention. She thought the Duke was a kind man and tried to believe it with all her heart, hoping for the best. In the evening, the butler met the Duke in the corridor and was surprised by the unexpected meeting at such a moment. He admitted that he was surprised not to find the Duke in his office, since he had not warned of his departure in advance. The Duke remarked that this was actually opportune, since he had just had a question for the butler that required attention. Loretta thought the Duke was kind because he allowed Melody to go with her, and this left a good impression on the girl. Melody also considered him kind, because the Duke took care of the safety of everyone in the house, showing care and attention. She noticed that all glass items had been removed so that the girls would not accidentally get hurt, and this spoke of the Duke's attentiveness. The Duke was choosing a gift and asked if the girls would like the color blue sky, so he could choose something special for them. The next day, the girls were delighted with what had been prepared for them, rejoicing at every little surprise and attention. They were informed that the Duke wanted to express his gratitude to his dear guests, which surprised and delighted the girls. Melody felt a little awkward from such attention, because she did not expect to be shown such care and warmth. Soon she received an expensive gift that looked very elegant and beautiful, striking in its elegance and design. Loretta said she wanted to put on her hat and walk in the garden, enjoying the sunny morning and the beauty around her. The butler said he would pick them up for dinner when it was time to return, so that everyone could enjoy the walk. The girls could now run around the estate as much as they wanted, enjoying the freedom and joy that this opportunity gave them. Melody noted that she would first like to thank the Duke for the care and attention shown to them that day. The butler noted that Mrs. Melody was a very well-mannered and polite girl, worthy of praise and respect from those around her. However, the housekeeper informed them that the Duke would return only late at night, and they would have to wait a little longer to meet him, which was a little disappointing. The butler added that it was the first time he had heard such warm words of gratitude from her, and this made a pleasant impression on him. Melody was grateful for this, because the Duke would probably be pleased if she wore a gift intended specifically for him. She was delighted and immediately put on the hat, admiring herself in the mirror, and feeling the joy of such a beautiful and expensive gift. Melody asked what she looked like, and the butler remarked that the hat suited her very well, and the housekeeper added that she looked like a little lamb. Meanwhile, the maid remarked that she had not seen such beautiful and high-quality gift boxes for a long time, and was amazed at their design. It seems Mrs. Loretta has done many good deeds, and if she can prove that she is the Duke's daughter, the second maid will be sent to serve her on the second floor. Alta was sure that this was how it should be, because the girl had helped in many matters, and Loretta underestimated her merits. At this time, Loretta ran up to them, and the maid asked if she was thirsty for water and whether it could be brought to her. The girl asked to bring water for herself and for Melody, taking care of her friend so that she could also quench her thirst. The maid asked if the Duke had become more favorable to Loretta recently, observing her behavior. The girl replied that the Duke had always been kind to her, as before, and she saw no change in his attitude. But the maid objected that this was not so, because as soon as Loretta began to behave more charmingly, she received an expensive hat as a gift. Otherwise, who would have given such a valuable gift to a stranger without noticing her special grace and merit? Loretta said that she was not a stranger to the Duke, because she was his real daughter, and this knowledge made her special. But the maid reminded her that until the priest acknowledged Loretta, she was not formally considered the Duke's daughter, despite her relationship. If Loretta behaves nicely and listens to the maid, she will be taken to the temple, and only there will she be recognized as the Duke's true daughter. Another maid intervened, but Alta said it was true, and Loretta had received the gift thanks to her advice and observations. Suddenly, the girl ran off somewhere and announced that she had found something interesting, arousing the curiosity of the maids. The maids were in complete shock when they looked there, not expecting to see the housekeeper, whose appearance greatly surprised them. The housekeeper was standing there, and Loretta was delighted to see her aunt, who had always taken care of her and knew all the family secrets. Loretta remembered Melody telling her that if necessary, she could turn to the Duke, the butler, or her aunt. The girl decided to ask the housekeeper if she knew why she was given the hat and where this unexpected gift came from. The housekeeper admitted that she herself was curious about where this gift came from and who could have thought of it first. Loretta noted that Sister Alta had said that the gift was something she had done, as if she had earned the attention. But the girl doubted that this was really the maid's merit, because everything could have happened for another reason or by chance. The maid ran after the housekeeper and tried to explain that Loretta could have misunderstood the words since she was still too young. But Loretta confidently said that she understood everything herself, and Melody even praised her for her prudence and attention to detail. The girl was very upset when Alta said that Melody could be thrown behind bars, and she became afraid for her owner. The housekeeper turned and looked angrily at the maid, who immediately began to justify herself, claiming that such a thing had never happened. Loretta remembered how, in the garden, while eating grapes, Alta said that she was not the Duke's daughter, until the priest officially recognized her. So Loretta had to be nice and tidy, so that Melody would be left in the house, and she and the maid could visit her on the second floor. After these words, the housekeeper grabbed Loretta and tore her uniform, showing that the rules in the house were not to be broken. The maid was very scared and began to cry, seeing that the situation had gotten out of control and could have serious consequences. She fell to her knees and admitted her mistake, asking Madame for forgiveness. Realizing all the responsibility for what happened, she confessed her guilt and sincerely hoped that she would be able to obtain forgiveness for her misdeed. After this, the maid got angry and started yelling at Loretta. Not understanding how the girl could do such a thing, she claimed that she had worked so hard to achieve this position and that Loretta had ruined it all with her actions. Loretta became frightened and raised her hand, trying to defend herself, blaming Loretta for what happened. At that moment, Melody appeared and stood between the girl and the maid, covering Loretta with her body for protection. Melody insisted that the maid leave Loretta alone and stop her accusations immediately. After some time, they found themselves in a garden where a huge and beautiful cake had already been prepared for everyone. The butler noted that it took a lot of effort, although the staff should have treated them with the utmost attention. The housekeeper reported that the maid was fired for her inappropriate behavior and violation of house rules. She added that more attention should have been paid to the staff and apologized for the incident. Loretta asked her aunt if she could have some carrot cake in the garden. Melody asked if they would be joining the girls at the table to share the treat. Loretta remarked that if she and Melody ate too much, they would probably just burst from overeating. Melody promised to share the cake with everyone, but the maids advised her not to eat too much so as not to harm herself. Each person was given a piece, and Loretta even shared hers with one of the maids, smiling with joy. At this time, the Duke arrived and noted that life in the mansion seemed to have become normal and calm for everyone present. The Duke immediately apologized for making the butler worry and asked what would happen to the dismissed maid. The butler announced that they were doing everything possible to prevent Melody from finding work in this field in the future. He had prepared a list of people in the capital who would receive letters tomorrow. But the Duke said he had told him about this before. He added that letters should also be sent to local estates to ensure wider coverage. The Duke noted that if his name was mentioned, the post office would respond more quickly, and the butler promised to take care of this. The Duke also inquired about the children, and the butler replied that the walk had been successful and without incident. The butler also announced that after the walk, the girls would have tea prepared especially for them. Judging by the laughter, it seemed more like a small ball than an ordinary tea party, with a cheerful atmosphere and noise. The Duke asked a little sheepishly about the hats, wondering if the girls liked them. The butler asked again, but the Duke quickly changed the subject, not wanting to delay the conversation on trifles. Suddenly, there was a knock, and the butler announced that Melody had arrived, appearing in the door with a smile. The girl immediately greeted the Duke, bowing and showing respect. She said she wanted to thank him personally for the hat he gave Loretta. She noted that Loretta had already fallen asleep, so she came in her place to convey her thanks in person. The Duke asked what it was about, and the girl explained that she wanted to express her gratitude properly and personally. She thought about writing a letter, but didn't know how to formulate the words, so she decided to thank him in person. The Duke noted that the tea party was lively, and the girl remarked that Loretta treated her guests very well. If the Duke had come, Melody thought the tea party would have gone even better, but he said he didn't like such meetings. After this, the Duke asked Melody to return to her room to rest and not disturb the others. The Duke noticed that the girl had turned pale and suggested that she might be unwell or tired. It was already late, and the maid immediately came running to escort Melody back to her room. But the girl turned to the Duke and expressed gratitude for the hat he gave her. She promised to wear it carefully and handle the gift carefully so that it would not get damaged. This made the Duke feel a little embarrassed, but he couldn't help but smile and look softly at Melody. The next day, Melody woke up early and went to read a book, enjoying the quiet morning hours. The wind outside the windows grew colder, and time in the house dragged on slowly, almost stopping. Everything in the house was designed to keep Melody busy, leaving her calm and reflective. The housekeeper noticed her presence in the kitchen and asked why the girl decided to come there unnecessarily. Melody explained that she wanted to do something and that her hands missed simple work and action. The housekeeper asked again what exactly she had been doing and what kind of work she wanted that day. She added that there were freshly baked peanuts on the stove and that the girl's nose seemed a little stuffy. The girl asked if the housekeeper was hinting that she could try the peeled peanuts herself. The housekeeper asked again if Melody was offering to feed her and let her take some from her hand. Melody tasted the peanuts and found them warm, slightly salty, and crunchy under her fingers. The housekeeper added that her taste buds were fine, and today she could take peanuts straight from her hands. For the rest of the week, Melody was not to go near the kitchen, as it was bustling and her presence was distracting the cooks. Melody became curious about the cause of the commotion and was informed that 3 family elders had arrived, strict and demanding. The housekeeper had to prepare dinner for these distinguished guests so that they would be satisfied and would not notice anything. The elders wanted to arrive before Loretta left for the temple so they could see the Duke's daughter in her usual surroundings. The housekeeper admitted that there was enough time and allowed Melody to return to the room, placing some peanuts nearby for a small snack so that the girl would have something to do. Now, Melody was no longer a child, and any accidental conflict along the way could cause displeasure among adults and lead to troubles that one would like to avoid. The girl headed to her room, wondering if everything would be okay and if something unexpected would happen that would disrupt the usual order. The fact that Loretta was the Duke's daughter remained unchanged, and this placed a special responsibility on everyone around her, including Melody. Suddenly, Melody heard a soft wind blow through the slightly open window and slightly move the light curtains, filling the room with a quiet rustling sound. This breath caused the candle to go out, leaving the room in a soft twilight that caused slight anxiety in the girl and forced her to be more attentive. She remembered the housekeeper's words about possible problems if she ran into someone along the way, and decided to be careful not to disturb anything. Understanding this, Melody decided to find out in advance what kind of troubles might arise and how best to avoid them in order to get to the room safely. As Melody tried to leave, someone grabbed her by the shoulder, and she was startled to notice that it was Ronnie, the Duke's youngest son, who had come at his usual time to visit. Ronnie came to the house at what he considered a convenient hour, but Melody did not offer him tea, believing that late evening was not the best time for a guest. She noted that it was already quite late, and it was only possible to offer a few peanuts. Otherwise, there would be no treat at all, and it would be indecent. Ronnie pointed out that he didn't need to be treated, and it didn't matter to him, since the visit was more for conversation than for food or snacks. Melody decided that if he didn't want it, she would eat it all herself and not share it with anyone, keeping the peanuts for herself and calmly going off to further reflection. After this, the girl asked why the young gentleman had come that particular evening, since his visit seemed unusual and required attention. Ronnie asked if she had heard about everything that had happened, and Melody asked what exactly he was talking about, trying to understand what events the young gentleman was talking about. He meant the guests, and Melody asked if he was talking about the elders who had arrived at the mansion, trying to catch the tone in which Ronnie was explaining what was happening. Ronnie became angry and asked how Melody knew about this, surprised by her attention and the fact that the girl had followed the events even without prompting. Melody assumed that the young gentleman himself had come to tell her about the events, to show that important information required her attention and caution in her actions. Ronnie asked her to sit closer and lean slightly so that he could tell her something important, and the girl did so, ready to listen carefully and not miss any details. He whispered to Melody to be more attentive with the elders and to watch their every move, because the slightest inattention could lead to trouble for the family. All this happened because the elders do not particularly favor Ronnie's family and are capable of creating problems if they notice the slightest weakness or inattention. They were capable of trying to drive the family out of the mansion at the slightest sign of weakness on their part. so Ronnie was concerned about the safety of everyone around Loretta. In the novel, Ronnie was sarcastic and said that Loretta could have easily been thrown out, but here he was genuinely concerned about his sister's safety and that nothing would threaten her. Here he watched over his sister, controlled the situation, and made sure that Loretta could remain calm in the house without fear of interference from the elders. Melody turned to the young gentleman and said that she would pass on his words to the missus to make sure that the important information would reach the housekeeper and she could take action. But he asked again, and she noted that she was sure Loretta would understand her brother's concern for her and appreciate that Ronnie was trying to protect her and warn her of possible dangers. Ronnie flushed and declared that this was complete nonsense and that one should not attach too much importance to words, since discussing them seemed to him a waste of time. Melody noted that if Ronnie wasn't worried about Loretta, it meant his concern was directed at her, and not the little girl, which made her think. After these thoughts, he became even more embarrassed and turned away, trying to hide his emotions, which were bursting out despite his efforts to remain calm. Loretta immediately apologized for her intrusion and for any words that might have offended Ronnie, understanding that sometimes curiosity can be too intrusive. She added that she was glad of his concern, but asked him not to joke or tease her so harshly that it would not turn into unpleasant games and hurt feelings. Ronnie noted that any stupidity must have a limit, and one must not behave recklessly because the consequences can be much more serious than it seems at first glance. He was sure that the elders of the house would try to demand his removal, even being here in the house, if he allowed himself to commit another ill-considered act. Ronnie added that Loretta shouldn't look so pitiful, because it wouldn't change anything, and the elders didn't have much sympathy for them, making any attempts pointless. Melody thought that they were just children, and she did not understand why high-ranking people showed such interest in their actions and words, watching their every move. She tried to get a word in, but Ronnie turned around abruptly, showing irritation and making it clear that his patience with her attempts to speak had completely run out. He called her ugly and slammed the door, demonstrating to everyone that his emotions had gotten out of control and that continuing the conversation at that moment had become impossible. Compared to the Duke, Ronnie seemed half stupid and unaware of the gravity of the situation they were in, not understanding the subtleties of what was happening around them. The maid approached the Duke and asked if he knew what was truly important to value in the Baldwin house, what he needed to pay attention to in order not to lose the family's status. She reminded that family traditions and honor remain key, without which any action could negatively impact the estate's reputation and prestige. The Duke wondered how rumors that he was looking for a daughter and accepting everyone in sight might affect the family's reputation and the perception of the Baldwin family by other nobles. The maid explained that such news could damage the estate's reputation, diminishing the respect and status that the Baldwin house had built over many years of painstaking work. The Duke hoped that, despite the rumors, he had managed to maintain respect for the house and strengthen the family's position, maintaining the prestige and honor of the Baldwins in the eyes of others. Meanwhile, Melody and Loretta were already getting ready for bed, clearing away the remains of dinner and setting the table, trying to get everything in order before going to rest. Melody felt tired and wanted to go to bed as soon as possible after a long day, when her energy had almost completely left her, leaving only a desire to rest. They noticed that the maids were watching them, and Melody carefully asked if they had anything important they wanted to share at this moment before bed. The maids admitted that they couldn't contain their emotions, as they had received more gifts for the girls, which made them excited and eager to share this with their children. The girls were surprised, and for a moment did not understand what exactly was being discussed and what gifts had been prepared for them, trying to guess what could have come this time. The maids did not give the gifts right away, but informed the girls that they could open them at any time convenient for them, leaving a sense of intrigue and anticipation for the surprise. Loretta put dinner aside and decided to look at the gifts that had been sent, eager to find out what the Duke or someone else had prepared for them this time. They were delighted with the gifts. They included beautiful green bows, the shade of which was rich and luxurious, causing joy and genuine admiration in the girls. The maids believed that the Duke had taken into account that the girls would benefit from bright and vibrant colors that would lift their spirits and be a pleasant addition to their daily life in the Baldwin household. Even aristocrats were forced to tread carefully when entering the Duke's home. Every step was closely monitored, and the slightest mistake could prove costly. The man decided to clarify one last time that the slave trader's daughter did not belong to the Duke. He understood that this information could cause discontent among everyone present. The second girl who arrived with her belonged to a completely different circle. The man had to return the slave trader's daughter to avoid any potential problems or disputes. The Duke paused, recalling all the events surrounding her. Each memory formed a chain that explained why she was here and what significance she held. He noted that her presence was at his request. This decision reflected the Duke's personal attitude and his confidence in the situation, which no one should question. The Duke entrusted her with an important task. Many believed he intended to make her a servant, but the man objected, arguing that such an outcome was impossible and absurd. Hiring a criminal was out of the question, he explained. High society would quickly condemn such an act and ridicule the Duke for disregarding order and rules. But the Duke noticed she was neither a criminal nor a servant. She was there as a guest at his request, and this completely changed the way he viewed her presence among high society. The presence of tainted blood in the Holy House violated all established rules. The Duke strictly adhered to his norms, and any deviation was considered unacceptable and dangerous. People began to hesitate, as even her fingers shouldn't have been there. Everything looked too unusual and raised doubts that could spread to the other guests. The Duke was faced with the question of how to proceed in this situation. Every moment demanded the utmost caution and a clear decision to maintain order and respect for the house. He recalled his father's words about a man guided by his emotions being able to protect his home. These words reminded him of the need to show fortitude and wisdom in any circumstances. They noted that the Duke would have been extremely angry had the situation turned out differently. His anger was well known, commanding respect and fear, and no one would have dared to contradict him openly. Father said that control over guests was determined by who was in charge of the house. It was this position that allowed the Duke to maintain order and discipline, ensuring the family's safety and prestige. However, he understood that many were encroaching on his rights. Not everyone recognized his authority, which created tension and sometimes complicated even the simplest situations in the household. The butlers apologized for the distraction. Their words were respectful and demonstrated their understanding of the mansion's order and internal discipline. The Duke announced that important news had just arrived from the temple. The news required his personal attention and immediate intervention, leaving him with no choice. He said he'd come himself. The decision was instantaneous but carefully considered, demonstrating his responsibility and high level of authority within the family and home. Loretta watched the creepy old men whispering over dinner. She carefully studied their glances and movements, trying to discern each one's true intentions. Melody noticed the men soon left the room. She suggested Loretta take a pillow and go with her, so the girl wouldn't be alone and would be safe. They were to move tonight. Every move was planned in advance to ensure protection and minimize any potential risks and threats. Loretta asked where they were going. Curiosity was mixed with a hint of fear, as nighttime movements in the mansion always hid danger and the unknown. Melody explained that they needed to settle in the safest spot in the mansion. This corner would provide peace and protection for the night, keeping Loretta safe. The children were to be moved to the second floor. The Duke ordered increased security to prevent any surprises and prevent possible external threats. But Melody kept an eye exclusively on strangers. Her attention was focused on potential external threats to provide additional protection and peace of mind for Loretta. Someone knocked again. The Duke was fed up with all this. His irritation was building, and it erupted in abrupt movements that reflected his displeasure with what was happening. He couldn't understand who dared to come home so late. It was a violation of the usual household routine and all the rules he strictly maintained for the family's safety. He saw Loretta and Melody outside the door. Their appearance was unexpected, evoking a mixture of surprise, wariness, and an immediate need to assess the situation. The Duke asked again, and Melody repeated the question. He still didn't understand the gist of the request, trying to gain clarity and understand the nature of their anxiety and anticipation. He asked what exactly. Melody said all kinds of evil. Mr. Ronnie advised caution and attention, emphasizing the importance of precaution. There was no one in the mansion more reliable than the Duke. His presence instilled confidence in the children, creating a sense of safety and security that no one else could provide. The Duke asked why she thought that. Melody explained that it was because he was Loretta's father, and his natural protection made her feel safe and secure. There's no proof yet that Loretta is the Duke's biological daughter. The main thing is that he rescued her from her kidnappers, showing care and attention. He protected Loretta from the kidnappers, building trust in himself, and showing a personal commitment to her safety and well-being in the Duke's house. Following these events, the Duke agreed to take responsibility for both girls, recognizing the need to provide them with protection, peace, and stability. Melody wished the Duke good night. He elaborated on her words, paying attention to every detail of the conversation and caring for her comfort and well-being. Melody announced that she would be going to her chambers to sleep. Loretta decided to stay with the Duke, to feel calm and protected near him. The Duke watched Melody as she tried to explain the situation to Loretta, appreciating her patience, gentleness, and ability to calm the child in a difficult moment. He recalled the words about the slave trader's daughter, considered a criminal. These thoughts had recently limited Loretta's rights and her actions in the Duke's house. Loretta was forbidden from entering the sacred Baldwin home. The rules seemed strict, immutable, and almost impossible to break without serious consequences. She agreed to stay because she knew Melody would be upset if she left. This had happened before, and the emotions were strong. Loretta decided to stay, believing it was necessary. Her choice was based on her concern for Melody and the affection she felt for her friend. He understood why Madame Higgins had described her that way. Others' views of Melody were accurate and fair, reflecting her true nature. Loretta showed the Duke his place. Her actions were natural and deliberate. She wanted to arrange everything correctly for everyone in the room. If Loretta's vibrant personality can change the atmosphere in the house, it will be an unexpected but pleasant event for everyone there. She also thanked me for the bows. Their beautiful color added joy and created small details that felt meaningful and important. The Duke asked how she knew the gift was from him. Melody's keen observation and attention to detail piqued his interest. Melody noticed that the room's decor matched the colors of the patterns on the letters and cards, which allowed her to guess the origin of the gift. The Duke didn't smile, but he also wished the children good dreams. His calm and attentiveness created a feeling of security and confidence in the children's safety. Then, he glanced at an old photograph of his wife, and the urge to reach out to her intensified. Memories of the past mingled longing with tenderness and a quiet sadness. The maids were discussing how the elder wasn't looking his best today. The situation was tense, and perhaps he was uncomfortable with the situation. Soon, Loretta's relationship with the Duke will be officially confirmed. This knowledge will change attitudes toward her and create new circumstances in the Duke's household. The elder revealed that he knew the girl was the Duke's biological daughter. His words confirmed important information and changed the state of affairs surrounding the family. Melody was delighted, realizing she'd suspected this before. Joy and relief gradually filled her heart, confirming her inner suspicions. The elder laughed, surprised by her courage, and asked why she was so confident that she could look after the Duke's daughter, causing slight confusion. Even such a task couldn't be entrusted to a girl. The elder wondered how the Duke could be near his only daughter if she was under such guardianship. Melody turned away, and the elder was surprised that she didn't take the money. Her refusal demonstrated her sincerity and a desire to act according to her conscience. Melody began to say she didn't want to leave. The elder noted that she cared for a strange girl, but didn't want to care for her own mother. They decided to send the girl to the central prison. The decision was forced and related to safety and community rules. The elder demanded that the coachman take her there quickly. His words sounded like an order that had to be carried out immediately, without the slightest delay or hesitation. She pushed the elder away and noted that he was an adult and had an obligation to behave politely, especially with someone the same age as Loretta, the Duke's granddaughter, without creating danger. Hilling told Melody to ignore the old madman. Everything that was happening was nonsense, not worthy of tears or unnecessary worry. She added that Melody shouldn't cry, as tears weren't welcome after breakfast. Her words were soothing and gently nudged her toward order and calm. The elder stated that he had already given her sufficient money for the task. His comment served as a reminder that the deal was complete and he was entitled to payment. After this, Hilling noted that the elder only thought of himself. His actions were aimed at showing off for the Duke, not at genuinely helping the girl or others. He pretends to be all-knowing in front of the Duke, showing off. In reality, his powers are limited, and the important decisions are made by completely different, more responsible people. In reality, he was simply a pensioner, nothing more and nothing less. His status and experience didn't give him the right to break the rules and bully children. After this, he struck the housekeeper in the face. Everyone present was shocked and horrified, unable to understand how such a thing could have happened before their eyes. Melody felt a sudden surge of fear. Her heart pounded, and anxiety gripped her as she witnessed the violence that had happened so unexpectedly. The girl rushed to her aunt to help her up. Her movements were swift and motivated by genuine concern for the injured woman. But the coachman grabbed her and covered her mouth. Melody found herself helpless, and the adult's strength limited her ability to influence the situation. The elder ordered the coachman to put the girl in the carriage. Immediate action was required, and all orders were carried out without the slightest delay. The maids noticed something was wrong. They began listening and observing closely, feeling a growing sense of unease. Patty heard Melody's scream, which immediately attracted everyone's attention. The sound clearly indicated that the girl was in danger and urgently needed help. At that moment, they noticed the housekeeper lying on the floor. The maids immediately realized something serious had happened and that intervention was necessary. They rushed to the housekeeper, checking to see if she was okay. Their concern for the injured woman was genuine, and they tried to figure out how to best help her. The housekeeper declared that the Duke needed to be found immediately. His presence was considered crucial to properly resolve the problem and restore order. She added that Melody had been taken to an unknown location. This fact heightened the anxiety of everyone present, making them feel a real and serious sense of danger. After a while, the elder began descending with Melody. His actions were decisive, swift, and confident, leaving no room for hesitation. He announced that they had already arrived. These words signaled the end of the transfers and the return of control to the elder, evoking a feeling of relief. The elder inquired about the girl's condition and why she refused to greet her mother. His questions reflected concern, anxiety, and slight bewilderment. He said the girl should miss her mother and want to see her. These words reflected the elder's expectations and the norms of behavior that typically guided him. Melody looked into the distance and spotted her mother standing nearby. Her gaze settled on her familiar figure, evoking a mixture of alarm, surprise, and cautious trepidation. The mother also looked at her daughter, as if trying to understand what had happened during this time, and to understand why the girl was behaving so strangely and cautiously. The man noted that Melody had long dreamed of seeing her mother. Now that wish had come true, and the long-awaited meeting she had been hoping for had finally taken place. All that remained was to pay compensation. After that, the girl and her mother would be able to leave the capital and return home to their normal lives, free from worry and danger. She was to stay away from the Duke. This ensured her safety and ensured that no one would bother the girl again or cause further problems. When the elder mentioned money, Melody's mother instantly became angry. Her anger was palpable, instantly changing the atmosphere and tension in the room. Melody was overcome with fear at her mother's reaction. She hadn't expected such fury and knew the situation could spiral out of control if her emotions escalated further. The mother turned to her daughter and said she'd always known Melody would bring the money to save her. Her words were a mixture of pride and a hint of reproach. A couple of hours ago, in the church hall, the priest delivered his verdict on the family ties. His decision was unexpected and upended the family's understanding of Loretta's situation. He announced that Mrs. Loretta was the Duke's daughter. This news stunned everyone present, as no one had expected such a turn of events or such a serious discovery. The priest couldn't understand the family's reaction. Apparently, the relatives were completely unprepared for such news, which left everyone feeling both shocked and confused. After this, Loretta turned to the Duke, wanting to know what steps they would take next. Her questions demonstrated a desire to understand the adult's future plans. She asked again if it was time to return home to Melody, to restore the usual order, and bring back the cozy atmosphere to which she had become accustomed since childhood. The Duke, surprised, asked why Melody had left. The men explained that the girl had vanished immediately after receiving the money, leaving no explanation for her father. The Duke was shocked by what he heard and asked if Melody had really asked for money. Finding it difficult to accept the fact that the girl could decide to do such a thing on her own, they confirmed this and added that the sum was considerable. The situation itself shocked them, as Melody had always been cautious and prudent in her actions. From the very beginning, Melody had planned everything meticulously, leaving nothing to chance. Afterward, the men asked the Duke where he intended to go next and what decisions he would make. The Duke said he wanted to personally verify the situation. Melody was likely still in the capital, and he intended to hear from her the full truth about what happened and her motives. The men tried to stop him, warning him that the girl would be in danger if he went there immediately, without preparation and the necessary protection from possible threats. They explained that separation from her mother had to be gentle and gradual, otherwise abrupt actions would be too harsh for little Loretta and would traumatize her. The Duke asked what exactly they meant. The men tried to explain the complexity of the situation and the undesirability of drastic actions that could harm the child. They said that Melody had to go to her mother in the central prison and hand over money for the release of illegally detained prisoners in order to fulfill her debt. True, she should have thanked the Duke for his help, because the girl was too young to survive the abrupt separation from her mother and the change of the familiar environment in the house. Moreover, the mansion was not suitable for an ordinary child, who was not yet accustomed to the palace conditions and the attention surrounding the heiress, and might feel uncomfortable. The Duke noted that Loretta wanted to see Melody, but there was no need to worry. The elder had a granddaughter of about the same age, and the girls would quickly find common ground. But Loretta stood her ground, declaring that she would never forget Melody. She considered her an important part of her life and a true friend who was always there for her in difficult times. The elder watched in horror. He wondered what the maids were looking at and how the children could exert such a strong influence on the adults around them. Then the housekeeper approached on crutches and asked the Duke to pay attention, demonstrating the importance of the moment and the seriousness of the situation under discussion. She said that she and Loretta wanted to talk to the gentleman to discuss further actions and decide how to proceed. The elder informed Melody's mother that her daughter had received money for caring for Loretta, and half of the money would be used as a bribe to free the prisoners. He didn't even expect that she would be able to cope with the punishment so quickly, demonstrating ingenuity, determination, and the ability to act in difficult conditions. The honor of the Duke's house was tarnished by the presence of a strange girl, which caused discontent in the family and a feeling of intrusion into the usual orders. Even the Duke sensed this, because the children in his house knew how to persistently curry favor and influence the impressions of themselves and the attitude of adults with their behavior. Suddenly, Melody's mother turned to the Duke and said that despite the fact that they didn't know each other, it didn't matter, and she demanded justice for her daughter. She demanded that the Duke tell her where the money he had given to her daughter was, insisting on an honest explanation and compliance with the rules. And she asked if he would get her out of here. The Duke replied that he had given the money to her daughter, and the matter was settled, showing that the decision had already been made and carried out. Melody noticed that when she was pushed into the carriage, she seemed to have dropped the bag of money, and now she realized that this could create serious problems for her and her mother. The incident left the mother furious, seeing that an important sum of money could have been lost, and her anger reflected her concern for her daughter's future and the consequences of this mistake. The elder apologized for interfering in her affairs and the situation with the girl, realizing that his actions only complicated the situation and showed his oversight. The guard was surprised how anyone could trust a child with that kind of money, not realizing that time was running out and Melody had nothing valuable left with her. The deal was canceled because everyone was in a hurry and the girl couldn't pay, and this situation suddenly interrupted the flow of events, forcing everyone to wait for further developments. The mother lied, claiming that Melody had the money, creating a false impression and putting her daughter in a difficult situation, which only increased the tension in the house. Melody began to cry as she realized that everything had gone wrong, and she felt very sorry that her actions and circumstances had led to such confusion and disaster. There was no choice left. The sinner had to be guided on the right path, her mistakes corrected, and she had to be shown what wrong actions and disobedience lead to. The guard opened the cell with Loretta's mother, preparing to correct what had happened, put everything back in its place, and maintain order and discipline in the house. They grabbed Loretta and blamed her for what happened, claiming that it was her own fault, as if the girl could have foreseen the consequences and avoided punishment. The mother held Loretta's hand, instructing her to give money only to her and trying to protect her daughter from further troubles, maintaining at least a semblance of control. She thought that without Melody's pregnancy, the girl could become Christensen's lover, and this increased her tension and fear of what would happen next. The mother did not know what mercy was. She saw only the destruction of her life due to her daughter's actions and could not show either kindness or understanding of the situation. After this, the girls were put in shackles, and Loretta fell, experiencing pain and fear, realizing the full severity of the punishment and the severity of what was happening around her. The guard ordered her to get up, claiming that she was preventing the doors from closing and that she should act faster, not noticing Loretta's fear and pain. The man rudely insisted that the girl obey his commands much more quickly. He sped up the punishment process in every way, trying to maintain power at any cost. He then looked at the elder with obvious bewilderment. The man didn't understand who exactly was approaching or why the atmosphere in the room had suddenly become so tense. Those present noticed that Duke Wayne Baldwin himself had not yet come down. This only heightened the general anxiety, causing everyone to vigilantly listen for every sound. The Duke suddenly drew his sharp sword. He sternly threatened to immediately chop off the leg of anyone who dared touch the child, demonstrating his fierce might to everyone. The guard was so frightened that he instantly fell to the floor. He hadn't expected such a violent reaction from the gentleman and realized he'd made a mistake. With a trembling voice, he asked the Duke about the reasons for such anger. The man desperately tried to understand his master's motives and find some way to save his life. The Duke's housekeeper, Hilling, quickly descended into the hall. She was ready to intervene immediately to protect Loretta and restore peace. The woman immediately ran up to little Loretta, angrily condemning the guard's behavior. She openly criticized the guard's actions, demonstrating that she wouldn't let anyone harm the little girl. The elder declared that the girl was not precious, ignoring her look of anxiety and disobedience, trying to devalue her significance and actions. He did not understand how this non-entity could end up as a guest in his house, causing discontent and surprise, wondering at fate and the events that led to this. The housekeeper looked closely at Melody's wounds, assessing their severity and the consequences of what had happened, thinking about how to ease the pain and prevent further troubles. The Duke decided to leave Loretta in the house and send Melody to the carriage, choosing between maintaining order and personally caring for the girl. Melody flinched when Hilling released her hand. Freedom filled her with both joy and anxiety, for the unknown lay ahead, and her heart clenched with apprehension. The Duke turned to Melody, trying to explain his actions. He wanted to rectify the situation and convey his point of view so that she would understand the motives behind his decisions. He apologized for failing to anticipate the situation and intervene in time to protect Loretta. Guilt was evident in his every word and look. The Duke offered to take the money Loretta had dropped. This would compensate for the incident and ease the situation for both of them, creating at least a little order in the house. Melody recognized the familiar pouch. It had now become a symbol of justice and order, which could be restored by maintaining balance in the Duke's house and protecting the girl. He explained that if Melody took the money, they would both be able to live without unnecessary worries for a while and gradually solve their problems without being subjected to unnecessary stress. Melody asked the others what they thought about her transfer to the Duke's household. She was concerned about how the family would react to the decision and how it would affect everyone's future. She asked if it had already been announced who would be joining the Duke's family. She waited for confirmation to understand the implications and anticipate the next course of events. The girl realized that if everything was true, her actions could ruin the future happiness of the Duke and Loretta. This thought made her wary and more attentive to the situation. The Duke said he cared little about the future. What mattered most to him was that his daughter wouldn't cry at night, and that caring for Loretta trumped any calculations or consequences. Hilling and her husband, the housekeeper, would also be upset. The Duke would feel uncomfortable living in a house without the usual order and harmony, where everyone fulfilled their duties and maintained order. Without Melody, the family would feel empty. The absence of part of their familiar circle affected everyone, changing the atmosphere in the house and disrupting the usual rhythm of life, creating discomfort. Melody's mother insisted that the girl not leave Loretta alone. She advocated for the child's interests, showing that caring for the girl came first, and warned of potential danger. She believed that with money, the girls would find happiness. Otherwise, Loretta would remain an outsider and helpless, deprived of support and choice, becoming lonely. The mother took the blame for everything that was happening. She thought she could feed and provide for her daughter, but she believed the girl would cope and improve, finding her own path to happiness. The Duke said they would discuss everything in the guest room to find a solution and restore order, taking into account the interests of all parties. The mother assured her that everything was in order with the taxes, and she believed that her daughter would not abandon her in difficult times and would make the right decision. She began to speak with kind words, but Melody responded coldly, demonstrating independence and inner strength by keeping her distance. The girl said that she did not open the bag and did not know whether it contained gold or silver, showing honesty and caution in her actions. The mother reminded her that Melody had been like this since childhood, and her habits were difficult to change without effort, so trust in her remained important. She insisted that Loretta give the money, considering it right and necessary to maintain family order and fulfill the girl's duties. Loretta complied and handed the money over to her mother, ending the tense moment and fulfilling the grown woman's demand, feeling relieved after the long wait. The woman wished for Melody to live happily with her precious gold, as if each coin was the most valuable gift in her life, capable of bringing joy. She was absolutely delighted when she saw the gold coins. Their shine dazzled the woman's eyes and caused genuine admiration and a feeling of happiness from the wealth she saw. The woman began to grab the coins with her hands, amazed at their value and wondering how someone could throw them away so thoughtlessly without realizing the true value of the treasures. Melody noted that her mother had not changed, continuing to play the role of an unhappy woman who was still waiting for her daughter and trying to evoke pity in her. The Duke didn't understand why she needed money, since it was forbidden to have personal belongings in prison, and such an act would only alienate his daughter and complicate their communication. The guard ordered Gina to return the money because it did not belong to her, and it was impossible to violate the strict order in the prison, where every property was carefully accounted for. The woman insisted that the money was hers, since her daughter had brought it, trying to convince the guard that she had the right to dispose of it and that it was her personal property. Melody burst into tears and ran upstairs, while her mother continued to insult her, as if taking pleasure in her daughter's suffering and enjoying her tears. Melody later apologized for running away so quickly, feeling a mixture of anxiety and relief, realizing she couldn't have handled the situation any other way. The Duke asked if her mother often called the girl such names, and Melody noted that he understood that these words were empty and did not pose a real threat to her feelings. She herself knew that she was not a stupid pig, and the Duke noted this, appreciating the girl's prudence and her ability to hold her own even in unpleasant and difficult situations. Afterwards, he offered her his hand and invited her to return home, showing the care and support that Melody appreciated and which gave her confidence. At that moment, she saw his smile for the first time and responded with her own timid but warm smile, feeling mutual warmth and attention from the Duke. She was still in tears when she heard a familiar voice that warmed her heart and calmed her, giving her a feeling of safety and comfort surrounded by familiar people. It was little Loretta, and her appearance brought Melody joy and relief, because the girl brought bright emotions and a feeling of a real family. The maids were unable to restrain Loretta, for she was certain that Melody was in the carriage, and nothing could change her determination to see her sister and make sure of her safety. Loretta ran up and hugged her beloved sister, not hiding her happiness at the meeting, showing sincere emotions and joy at the opportunity to be near Melody again. Melody thought about wanting to be with Loretta, and afterward, her wounds were treated to ease the pain, showing care and attention to the girl's condition after the ordeal. The maid remarked that Mrs. Loretta and the Duke were very much alike, noting the similarity of their facial features and character, as well as a similar spirit of courage and confidence in their behavior. Melody asked how exactly the similarities were manifested, and the maid said that Loretta was bold and confident even in front of the elders, showing a character worthy of respect. The girl was very similar to her father, who always showed courage and determination in any situation, which made Loretta similar to him in his actions and deeds. After this, Loretta came to Melody with candy, bringing joy and care to her sister, demonstrating attention and a desire to make her life at least a little brighter and more pleasant. Loretta asked Melody if she had been scared, and the girl honestly confirmed that she had experienced fear, feeling danger and anxiety that had left a mark on her emotions. Then Melody turned to Loretta in surprise, asking why she was so kind to her, amazed by the sincerity of her younger sister's care and attention. Loretta looked at Melody with surprise, as if she had not expected such questions and attention from her older sister, her eyes expressing slight confusion and interest. She admitted that she didn't know the answer herself, calling Melody "little bird," and showing her innocent sincerity, which made her words soft and truthful. She simply loved Melody very much, and this feeling was obvious in her eyes, requiring no explanation. It was expressed in her every look and gesture. Melody also admitted that she loved Loretta very much, and the girl, listening to this, asked in surprise why her older sister was crying, trying to understand the emotions. The Duke, meanwhile, inquired about Mrs. Higgins' whereabouts, closely monitoring how Melody was being cared for and how the house was being maintained. The guy reported that after her return, she had hardly left the room, and offered to go to the Duke instead of her to give the owner the opportunity to find out the news. He reassured them that there was nothing to worry about and asked how the housekeeper and Melody were feeling after the events that had happened, showing care and attention. There were no serious injuries, which was a relief to those present, allowing them to relax a little after the tense and anxious moments of the day. However, it was decided to call a doctor to make sure that there were no hidden injuries or health problems, so that everyone could rest assured about the girl. The man also ordered the room to be tidied up, maintaining cleanliness and order in the Duke's house, so that the environment remained comfortable for everyone. He asked what the Duke was talking about, and he explained that the eldest son's chambers needed to be tidied up so that the meeting would be pleasant and orderly. Claude would be back soon, as he had sent a letter in advance about his imminent arrival, and this calmed everyone in the house a little, relieving some of the anxiety and tension. The maid thought that the lady was sad because she could not paint her face the way she wanted, and this made her feel a little dissatisfied with herself. After this, the maid decided that the mistress simply did not want to share the chambers with Melody, and carefully asked if she should bring the girl her favorite peanuts for consolation. Then she suggested going to the garden to collect leaves, but Loretta replied that this could be postponed because now she just needed to rest and collect her thoughts after all her worries. The girl felt tired from constant worries and anxieties. She wanted to free herself from the burden of her thoughts, even if only for a little while, and feel lightness in her heart. The maid noticed that Loretta really had a lot of difficulties in her life, so she gently asked her to talk about what was troubling her, showing concern and understanding. Loretta said it was a secret, but the maid promised not to reveal it to anyone, maintaining the girl's trust and strengthening their warm relationship. The girl said that in the temple, the grandfather in white told her that now she and the Duke were one family and would always be together, like a promise that warmed her heart. The maid thought that this should worry her, but Loretta assured her that there was no need to worry because her father loved her, and she reciprocated, feeling the warmth of the family. She was bothered by her brother's claim that he and Melody weren't family, and it created an uncomfortable feeling of unfairness that she couldn't just let go of. Loretta wanted to be with Melody forever, but she knew it seemed impossible if they weren't family, so she dreamed in her mind that the young man would also become her daddy's daughter. The maid noted that it turned out that Loretta wanted Melody to become part of the Baldwin family and to be constantly nearby, feeling the closeness and warmth of a home where she was welcome. Loretta said it would be wonderful if she and Melody could become related and experience a real closeness where every day brings joy in being together. The maid clarified that it was impossible to become the Duke's daughter directly, but there was another way that could help the girl get closer to her dream. She added nothing, but merely retold the story to another maid, keeping all the details a secret so as not to destroy the girl's tender plan and her hopes. If the girl had accidentally let it slip, it would have been possible to immediately begin calculating the amount of the benefit after finishing work, which made the whole situation funny and almost comical. Melody was certainly a special guest, but the thought of marrying the Duke's son seemed too distant and almost impossible, like an unattainable dream in reality. She looked at the girl with trusting hope, like a puppy, expecting at least some advice or hint from the maid who could guide her thoughts and actions. The girl wondered what another maid would say in her place, trying to understand a possible solution and assess how to act in such a difficult situation. At that moment, Loretta appeared from behind and asked what kind of wedding they were talking about, which cleared up the situation a little and brought clarity to the girl's plans and expectations. The girl was delighted and realized that this idea could work, which filled her with a slight inspiration and hope, making her heart beat a little faster with anticipation. She thanked the maid and immediately ran away, full of determination to bring her plans to life, as if energy and determination filled her every movement and step. Another maid told Patty that she could start collecting her unemployment benefits now, anticipating the future worries and concerns that would inevitably come with the girl's plans. The maids prepared an ointment for Melody to heal her wounds, showing care and attention, demonstrating that there are people in this house ready to support and help with any injury. She had heard that a scar might remain where the wounds were, but she didn't attach much importance to it because she already had many marks, each of which had its own story. Although she already had many scars, adding another one seemed insignificant, and she calmly accepted it as a part of life, accepting each mark without fear or regret. The housekeeper asked what Melody was doing and what she was doing now, watching the girl with curiosity and trying to understand her habits and behavior in this house. She didn't understand why Melody didn't change her habits and continued to act in her own way, causing slight irritation and at the same time interest in her independence. Melody insisted that this was not the case, that there was progress, and that she was gradually learning new things, trying to cope with herself, and gradually mastering the necessary skills and abilities. She has recently learned to walk more elegantly and gracefully, which has been a noticeable improvement in her demeanor, reflecting her efforts and desire to improve every day. The housekeeper heard from the maids that Melody loved to have snacks, and she was convinced that this was indeed true, because the girl always found time to eat between chores. Now they would give her fewer sandwiches, and the housekeeper wondered if the girl would get caught if she noticed that there was a little less on her plate than usual. Worries about food could overshadow any other thoughts Melody had, but she knew how to stay calm, control her mood, and not let little things ruin her day. The girl just smiled, noting that, fortunately, not all of her snacks had been taken away from her, and this slightly eased her condition, giving her confidence in her own abilities. Because of this, the housekeeper turned over on the bed, not understanding how to deal with this restless girl, whose actions were sometimes unpredictable. She didn't know what to do with Melody, hoping that the girl would gradually learn to take care of herself and her actions, understanding the boundaries of what was permitted and responsibility. Melody thought her aunt might have a headache, which would explain her strange behavior and stern remarks that sometimes seemed too harsh, but the housekeeper assured her that there was no need to worry, that she was perfectly fine, and the girl did not need to worry about her well-being, because taking care of herself was more important than worries. The little girl had just recently gotten rid of the villain who had been tormenting her and constantly frightening her, leaving traces of fear on her face and in her heart, making every moment dangerous. She didn't understand why Melody decided to take care of such an old woman as a housekeeper, since she herself was still too young to understand the complex affairs of adults and give advice. She needed to spend more time with kinder and more caring people, so Melody offered to bring water to ease the housekeeper's condition and show concern for her health. After this, the housekeeper turned to Melody, wanting to say something important so that the girl would understand her new responsibilities and gradually take responsibility for the assignments. She asked if the girl had heard that a young gentleman was arriving tomorrow, who was expected in the house, and to whom Melody would be assigned to help and keep order. Melody had not heard about this, although it was already time to prepare for his arrival, since the events of the work suggested that the visit of the young gentleman was just around the corner. The young gentleman will definitely want to drink tea, and when this happens, Melody will serve him the drink, fulfilling her small but important errand in the Duke's house. The girl was surprised and did not understand why she was given this task, considering herself too inexperienced and unsure to fulfill such a responsible role among the guests. The housekeeper noted that she had already informed the Duke of her decision to give Melody this small assignment, and now the girl would be among his guests, so it was necessary to prepare for the meeting in advance. Melody needs to learn to behave properly, because it's not a small thing. It's important to have good role models and understand how to behave properly around important people in the house. Volodya decided to clarify why she had been entrusted with serving tea, and the housekeeper explained that if she didn't want to, she could refuse, since consent to perform duties must be completely voluntary. Melody admitted it wasn't a matter of reluctance, although the housekeeper was partly right. It was still important to try to understand how to behave properly in society. The housekeeper noted that this was wonderful and reminded him of the need not to make noise and not to upset the young gentleman. Otherwise, the consequences could be unpleasant and undesirable. After these words, Melody threw herself into the housekeeper's arms, feeling grateful for the care and support she always received from her experienced mentor and advisor. Melody expressed her gratitude to the housekeeper for her attention and help, which made her more confident and prepared for her new responsibilities in the Duke's house and for communicating with the family. Volodya promised to make an effort, to try her best, and not to let down those who entrusted her with this responsibility, in order to justify the trust placed in her and the expectations of her mentor. The next morning, the butler met the young gentleman and noted that he had grown up, become more mature, ready to participate in family affairs, and demonstrate his abilities in society. The boy expressed a desire to become a gentleman, like the butler, striving for perfection, imitating his manners and behavior in order to be a worthy and attentive member of the Duke's family. The butler warned him not to adopt bad habits, and the young gentleman said that he had respected him for more than 15 years and did not wish to repeat his previous mistakes or shortcomings. He inquired about his father's whereabouts, and the butler informed him that the Duke had been summoned to the imperial palace. All the servants were asleep, leaving him the only one awake and maintaining order. The young gentleman asked if his sister and Ronnie were awake, to which the butler replied that it was too early. There were special guests in the house who required special attention and care. The butler promised to gradually tell the young gentleman about her and was confident that they would be able to get along and establish mutual understanding from the first days of their acquaintance and communication in the house. Melody was truly a delightful child, with a kind and inquisitive nature. She could win anyone's affection and instantly attract attention with her gentle nature. After some time, the young gentleman met his sister, and this acquaintance became an important step in establishing trusting relationships in the Duke's family, strengthening their bond. Melody didn't understand what was happening. She had assumed he should have arrived during the day, as she had been following the housekeeper's instructions, carefully awaiting his visit and hoping for his appearance. The housekeeper explained that the young master would arrive the following afternoon and advised Melody to begin preparations after breakfast so that everything would go smoothly, with dignity, and in line with the expectations of the Duke's family. She saw him and his sister go off to their own world, and she realized that he had arrived early because he missed Loretta so much and wanted to see her as soon as possible. Claude Baldwin was the most well-mannered and polite young man in the capital, possessing good manners and an attractive charm that impressed everyone around him. The Duke's eldest son was distinguished not only by his outstanding abilities, but also by his attractive appearance, which made him noticeable among his peers and a favorite of the public. The novel described how his love for Loretta was boundless, and his concern for his sister was evident in every action, every word and deed. He played the role of the ideal older brother, and then greeted the guests, demonstrating good manners and the ability to conduct himself in society with dignity. Of all the characters, he was her favorite, and Melody imagined what her life could be like in such a close-knit and caring family. This served as a consolation to her, and she imagined herself next to him, noting that it was a great honor for her to be acquainted with such an attentive young man. Melody brought an elegant hat for the lady, as the sun was blazing too mercilessly. She wanted to protect her from the hot rays and any possible discomfort. Duke Wayne Baldwin noted that they had already heard about the girl. He gently assured Melody that she could raise her head, that everything was fine, and there was no cause for alarm. His majestic radiance was simply blinding. Father Loretta's manners and very presence were incredibly impressive to everyone around him. The man didn't think he looked quite right now. Melody could barely bring herself to look him straight in the eye, feeling a mixture of embarrassment and admiration. The girl quietly noted that it wasn't his appearance that was the issue. The Duke emphasized that she was a very curious and engaging person, which made her extremely interesting in his eyes. He was genuinely delighted to make their acquaintance. Soon, little Loretta ran up to them, bringing a childish lightness and a particularly sincere friendliness to the atmosphere. Loretta happily pointed out that she'd been looking forward to Melody's arrival for a long time. She hinted at the immense importance of this visit and was ready for more games at her father's house. Melody solicitously inquired if little Loretta was too hot. She suggested putting on a hat, concerned for the baby's health and comfort in the fresh air. But Loretta explained that that was not the issue at all, but that there was something important that she wanted to discuss with Melody right now, without putting off the conversation. She emphasized that they loved each other, and Melody confirmed this, noting that she really liked Loretta and that she had warm feelings for her. In this situation, Loretta proposed getting married together, demonstrating the seriousness of her intentions and the desire to be with Melody forever. Melody was shocked by what she heard, and her brother also noticed the unusualness and seriousness of the proposal, assessing the possible consequences of such words. Loretta said she would marry her, and there was a determination in her voice that left no doubt about her intentions and feelings. And Loretta will be the one who can make Melody truly happy, giving her the bright moments that she has long waited for and dreamed about. Melody hugged Loretta, feeling the warmth of her small body, and in her thoughts she wondered how she could make her even happier by feeling joy next to her. Loretta promised to love Melody more than anyone else in the world, filling every moment with care and devotion that could not be measured in words. Melody couldn't help but glance towards Claude and see a strange expression on his face that immediately caused her a mixture of surprise and embarrassment. Looking at him, Melody felt very embarrassed, realizing how different Claude was from everyone she knew, and how difficult it was for her to contain her emotions around him. He was so handsome that Melody felt like she was going crazy. Her thoughts were racing, and her heart seemed to stop, not expecting such a look and attraction. Claude Baldwin, the ideal brother, was jealous by nature, anxious at the sight of anyone Loretta liked, and this made Melody even more nervous. At first, Melody was delighted to be tasked with making tea, enjoying the opportunity to be useful and to be around Loretta, running her little errands. But now Melody was deeply worried about how her actions might be perceived by Claude. She feared he saw her as more than just a guest in the Duke's house. She was already imagining Claude as a devilish image and wondering who she could be for Loretta, feeling anxious and slightly confused at the same time. Melody decided not to show her fear, trying to keep her composure. She wanted to remain calm when she met Claude and not reveal the true feelings that were troubling her. She knocked carefully, and Claude opened the door himself, which surprised Melody. She hadn't expected him to do so without the butler or housekeeper, which seemed odd. Melody remembered Loretta's words about the wedding. She realized it had been a childish joke, and Claude probably wouldn't think anything bad about it, which calmed her down a bit. When Claude realized it was Mrs. Melody standing before him, his expression changed slightly. It was a mixture of surprise and caution, reflecting his attention to her manners and behavior. He remarked that he'd heard about her desire to learn manners. This observation slightly alarmed Melody, as she realized Claude was closely monitoring her every move in the Duke's house. Claude assumed it was to get closer to Loretta. Melody realized her efforts were making a difference, though now it added a sense of anxiety and responsibility for her actions. Melody confirmed this and demonstrated that Loretta had always been the most important thing to her. She tried to convey the sincerity of her intentions and her concern for the child without mincing words. She added that she would always be by Loretta's side, ready to support her in everything. Melody wanted to show that Loretta's care would be complete within her presence in the Duke's house. Claude repeated her words, and Melody realized she might have provoked sibling jealousy. She realized her words could be misunderstood, which added to the uneasiness in her soul. She was frightened and tried to explain herself somehow. Melody tried to soften the situation and show that her intentions were pure and friendly, and she didn't want to create misunderstandings. But Claude said he understood and said goodbye. His departure left Melody confused and anxious, as the farewell seemed final, without further words or hints of further communication. After that, he closed the door right in her face. Melody was left feeling awkward and confused, trying to comprehend his actions and understand the motives behind such stern behavior. She couldn't understand why the young Duke had acted this way. Melody pondered his reaction, which seemed simultaneously stern, mysterious, and almost incomprehensible to an ordinary guest. A few days later, Melody approached Claude with an offer to hear a story, hoping to lighten the mood a little and show that she was friendly and open to communication. She could remember their first meeting with Loretta, returning in her thoughts to the sweet moments that brought her and the child closer and made these days meaningful and warm. Claude looked at her in surprise, but remained reserved, showing interest, though not enough to completely relax, which forced Melody to choose her words carefully. He made it clear that the offer was tempting, but that was not enough, and Melody realized that it would take more effort to earn his trust and the Duke's favor. Claude remarked that she should try harder next time, and Melody hoped that today she could show her best side to earn his respect. If she keeps trying, one day she will be able to enter Claude's room without fear, gaining his trust and respect, as well as a little more freedom in the Duke's house. Life in the Duke's house was so happy that Melody almost forgot how much everyone hated her, although she had initially prepared herself for hostility and difficulties among the inhabitants of the house. However, Claude's behavior confused her, making her wonder about his thoughts and intentions, because he was unpredictable and closely watched her every action, without showing any emotion. When Melody brought her hat, Claude said that she would feel better in the shade, and she took this as concern, although expressed in a slightly strange, unfamiliar form. She thought he didn't hate her, but his strange behavior made her wary, watching his every move and trying to predict the Duke's reaction. Claude noted that it was Melody who helped find Loretta, but she did not fully understand what his confession consisted of and how to properly express gratitude for his words. The man shouted because he did not understand the bad attitude, since he himself had refused to cooperate with the trading organization under the previous Duke, which caused the conflict. Melody moved down and asked what was going on, trying to understand the reason for the outburst and how best to handle the situation. The butler told Melody to go back to her room, as this spectacle was not intended for children's eyes, and explained that she should not interfere. Melody asked what she had done wrong, feeling anxious and wanting to make things right, as she didn't want to break the rules or hurt anyone. The experienced butler revealed that this suspicious man was an impudent charlatan. Melody thought hard about cunning liars and how easily they deceive the gullible. Wayne Baldwin is extremely distrustful of any deceivers. The girl realized that her own actions must be honest to earn respect and trust in this house. Melody lowered her eyes guiltily, pondering the nature of lies. She desperately wanted to remain honest and still help little Loretta without arousing unnecessary suspicion among the servants. The next day, the heroine again served Claude fragrant tea and sincerely apologized. She tried to make amends and demonstrate her devotion to the interests of the Duke's family. The girl recalled the words about the gentleman's intolerance of deception. This made her seriously consider the importance of sincerity in everything she does. Melody clearly understood that she had to come clean and not hide the truth. She was determined to be honest about her intentions to avoid misunderstandings. She boldly admitted that she sometimes lied to fit other people's expectations, but that didn't change her pure concern for Loretta and her desire to benefit everyone. She is not interested in learning etiquette, and she is not sure whether it is worth doing at all, realizing that sincerity and care for the child are more important than formal rules. Melody had no non-aristocratic acquaintances to turn to for advice, so she was left alone with her thoughts. Claude noticed that her thoughts had taken her astray and said that good manners were not only needed in high society, especially in the capital. He added that she shouldn't worry too much about it, and also expressed gratitude for her admitting her concerns. Claude supported her, realizing she was lying. Melody felt like he hated her, and she continued to come every day, wondering how to fix the situation. She felt very sorry and hoped that Claude was no longer angry with her for past mistakes and misunderstandings. He said no way, but Melody took it the way she needed to and felt relieved. The girl didn't quite understand what he was talking about, but Claude was smiling, and there was a hint of goodwill in his breath. After this, the young man politely wished Melody a good day. He carefully closed the heavy door behind him and left the girl alone with her troubled thoughts. The next day, the servants prepared the fragrant tea again. She could carry it to the room, observing all the rules of propriety and exercising extreme caution. Everyone in the house also secretly dreamed of being with the young master during tea. They quietly envied her special position and closeness. Those around her were curious about what exactly she was talking about with Claude. They assumed he was displaying all his nobility and dignity at these moments. Melody had no idea what trials the day held for her. Her sensitive heart sensed some important and completely unexpected events. Someone cast another disdainful glance her way. The girl couldn't understand whether yesterday's difficult conversation had managed to change his attitude toward her, even slightly. She knocked softly on the massive door and paused for a moment when it didn't open immediately. A slight sense of unease and a hint of uncertainty settled in Melody's soul. At that very moment, she was even glad to learn that the young master had only been away for a short while. Now her visit to his chambers promised to be peaceful and safe. She carefully opened the door and peered inside. Now she saw the Duke's private quarters with her own eyes, not just in scenes from a novel she'd read. Until this moment, she had only been familiar with a small part of the room. Now, behind Claude, a multitude of books and perfectly arranged personal belongings opened up. The maid explained that in the master's absence, the brewed tea could be left directly on the table, and the hot, boiling water should be carefully carried back to the kitchen. When Claude finally returned and called the maid, she would bring everything she needed. Melody could no longer worry, knowing that every request would be fulfilled. The tea in the teapot remained very hot. Melody carefully poured it into the mugs so that by afternoon, everything would be ready for relaxed drinking. She decided to go immediately to little Loretta so that they could have a snack together and spend time in a pleasant environment without rushing anywhere. As Melody was leaving the room, she unexpectedly bumped into young Mr. Claude. He appeared in the hallway doorway at just the wrong moment. The girl hadn't expected Claude to return right now. Her heart pounded even harder from the sudden surprise and a slight feeling of confusion. In a panic, she tripped over the edge of the furniture and lost her balance. She fell, along with the heavy kettle, dousing herself with boiling water and experiencing intense pain. Claude instantly noticed her precarious fall and quickly assessed the situation. He rushed to her side to try to prevent burns and help Melody. The young man tried to grab Melody as she fell, but hot water had already begun to spill everywhere. Every action he took now required the most immediate reaction. Claude resolutely tried to push the girl aside, away from danger. He acted very carefully to ensure Melody was not harmed and was safe. Then, Melody saw with horror that Claude had taken the full brunt of the boiling water. He had endured the terrible pain so that she would remain unharmed, protecting her without hesitation. The girl hastened to say that she would bring cold water, trying to help and ease Claude's suffering, feeling responsible for what had happened and his safety. She admitted that it was her fault and asked him to wait a little while. She found everything necessary to help and care for him, trying to act carefully. Claude said she might ask someone else for help if she felt more comfortable with support to feel more confident and calm in the situation. He asked her to calm down first and make sure she was not hurt, out of concern for her safety and not wanting to cause her any harm with his actions. After this, he suggested closing your eyes and ears, concentrating and counting to a certain number in order to calm down, distract yourself from anxiety, and gain control over yourself. Melody wondered with surprise if simply counting would really help, sincerely doubting that such a method would be able to reduce the fear and tension she felt. Claude explained that panic doesn't solve problems, and that now it's focus and counting that will help you cope with the situation, regain control, and move on calmly. He must be calling the maids now to check that everything was in order, and that no one would disturb what was happening in the room, without distracting the attention of either her or Claude. Melody thought that he might be in a lot of pain, like that rainy day when she herself could barely cope with fatigue and physical pain. Understanding his condition, having counted to the end, she decided to open her eyes, realizing that she could no longer remain in the darkness and fear, and that she needed to look at what was happening and accept what was happening. When she opened her eyes, the young gentleman was sitting in front of her, carefully observing her condition, not taking his eyes off her and assessing her reaction, trying to understand her feelings. He watched her with a smile, as if silently asking how she was feeling and whether she was ready to talk, trying to support her with gentle care and attention to her condition. He relied on the fact that she was already feeling better, and that his presence would calm her down a little, relieve her anxiety, and help her cope with the excitement after what had happened. She thought to herself that she felt better, but at the same time, she still felt guilty about everything that had happened, as if she could have prevented the situation and protected Claude from pain. He said that she was deceiving herself again, seeing it on her face, and that the blame was entirely hers, and there was no point in trying to hide it or diminish the significance of what had happened. Melody lived in the Duke's house, but she felt herself at the limits of his patience and control, noticing the tension in every movement and gesture around her. The Duke apologized, noting that he was in a hurry and wanted to get back before she arrived, so that Loretta would not be left alone in the room and everything would be calm. Melody asked why they were in such a hurry, and he noted that she always arrived at the same time, although she reminded him that he was rarely allowed inside to see her. Because of this, the Duke apologized, adding that it was hard to look her in the eyes and ask for forgiveness. He was jealous, because Melody was very close to Loretta, and this worried him. He said that this is not childishness. All Baldwins are like that. Love takes away their control, and it is impossible to suppress the strong emotions that boil inside when intimate with loved ones. Melody admitted that she understands everything, although sometimes this understanding comes too late, and she has to think through a lot to collect her thoughts and feelings together. Claude noticed that she rarely listened to other people's advice, and this made her independent, but at the same time vulnerable, since the responsibility fell only on her. He emphasized that panic and problems do not resolve themselves, like a cloud covering the sun, which only disappears when a clear sky brings back the light. The most important thing, in his opinion, is to behave with dignity, avoid mistakes, and confidently do what is necessary, without delay or giving in to doubts and fear. Melody asked if this was really how they behaved in front of the Queen, trying to understand if there was any sense or rationality to it, and why such discipline was actually needed. The Duke said that it was possible, and noted that Melody seemed to have finally calmed down, as evidenced by her gaze and even breathing, as if the tension was gradually fading. Melody admitted that she feels much better, thanks to his presence and attention, which warms her heart, gives her confidence and a sense of security. Claude asked if he could ask for something in return, hinting that a small favor on her part would be a reasonable payment for the care and attention she received. Melody herself didn't understand what she was doing, confused about her feelings and how to respond to his requests, because emotions interfered with clear thinking and decision-making. When he asked her for something in return, he said it calmly, but his gaze left no doubt about the seriousness of the request, and she felt that refusal was impossible without consequences. He explained that panic is a problem that cannot be solved by acting chaotically and giving in to fear, but only through thoughtful steps and calm actions can everything be corrected. Melody cried, thinking he was laughing at her, and he quietly hinted about his hand, offering the care and attention that she needed to show in order to feel protected and confident. The Duke told her to remember to come every day after lunch, so that their meetings would become a habit, a part of her day, and this would help create a sense of stability and order. The next day, she came to him. He drank tea and calmly watched her, assessing her condition after yesterday's event, monitoring the emotions and reactions that betrayed her thoughts. He sensed something was wrong, noticing how she was looking at him intently, as if trying to find answers to questions he hadn't even asked. Her arm healed in just 2 days. She reported that everything was fine, which somewhat reassured the gentleman, who had been worried about her health. He was a villain, because she copied and made copies of his notes, carefully following all his notes and plans for future actions. The notes contained notes on the travels of recently arrived members of the Duke's family, which she studied with lively curiosity and interest. She made a copy without understanding what it was for, simply carrying out an assignment that seemed important and necessary to him. Even though it was fun, he was still the villain, controlling and watching her every move, not allowing her to relax for a minute. No matter how much money she asked why they needed it, she never received an answer, remaining confused and not understanding the Duke's motives. She was already sleepy after a whole day spent copying documents for the Duke. Fatigue weighed on her shoulders, and her eyes were closing on their own. She had trouble understanding his thoughts, and on the way, she accidentally bumped into someone. The sky was overcast, and rain was threatening to start at any moment. She apologized to the man. It turned out to be a man with dark hair and a stern face, who studied her carefully and did not look away. This man was one of the subordinate elders, accustomed to maintaining order and ensuring that no one violated the rules established by the Duke. She had no right to be afraid of him because she was the Duke's guest and had the right to respect, despite her origin and young age. They looked at her and whispered among themselves, surprised that the daughter of a slave trader looked so harmless, although her origin was known. If anyone dared to offend her, it would be perceived as an insult to the Duke, and the consequences for the offender could be extremely serious and dangerous. But what was more important was not their attitude towards Melody, but the fact that these people felt hatred towards Loretta, the future heir of the Duke, which created a tense atmosphere. An event was about to happen that would change the atmosphere in the house, and Melody felt a slight premonition, as if something was about to come to light. The maid turned to Melody and informed her that the Lord was expecting her, warning her about a meeting with the Duke and the need to behave with utmost caution. When she entered the Duke's presence, her gaze fell on the bows. She thought the elder had returned them, although in fact they were a gift from the Duke himself. The Duke was silent at first, watching her carefully, studying every movement and effort, trying to understand her character and intentions hidden behind her embarrassment. She apologized for her question, looking down sheepishly, trying to show respect while hiding her concern that her thoughts were being read too clearly. The Duke explained that the question was not stupid, and Melody was delighted, realizing that the gift of a bow was a manifestation of his attention and care for her. She felt grateful, and the Duke noticed a trace of ink on her hand, a sign of her morning's work copying papers, leaving a slight imprint. He asked about the stain on his hand, watching the small marks with a rare interest that was rarely evident in his stern and reserved looks. Melody admitted that she had soiled herself while writing, apologizing in advance, fearing that the Duke would consider her a sloppy and overly restless girl. She was afraid he would think she was dirty, because few people would be happy with a child with ink stains on their hands and clothes on such an important day. She felt bad knowing that no one had explained how to behave properly, and she often felt guilty for her minor mistakes and oversights. The Duke patted her head and praised her, and Melody felt relieved, knowing that his approval was important and could calm her troubled heart. He was worried that she would start apologizing endlessly again, anticipating her tendency to self-flagellate for the slightest shortcomings and mistakes. She asked again with surprise why he considered her a good girl, not fully believing the praise and feeling a little awkward because of the unexpected confession. The Duke explained that they often had different people come to see them, and the bows would come in handy, showing their concern for the future and Melody's preparation for public visits and meetings. Melody thought the bow was a sign of his gratitude and thanked the Duke, appreciating the attention and small gestures that showed respect and care. The Duke said there was nothing to thank her for. It was his duty, and she realized that for him, the manifestation of kindness and concern was natural and spontaneous. She apologized for distracting the Duke from his work and promised to take care of his time, trying not to make any more mistakes and not to interfere with his important affairs and decisions. The Duke noticed that she looked tired and asked if she was sleeping well, to which Melody nodded, although in fact her sleep was restless and fitful. The lie was necessary to avoid possible consequences, because she understood that she had to control events and anticipate danger in advance. The incident with the letters and plans organized by the elder's assistants had gone awry, and Melody knew that intervention was required immediately and without delay. Something was about to happen that would break Loretta's heart, and Melody had to watch her every night, not missing the slightest movement. If someone tried to break in, she was ready to scream. But suddenly, a figure appeared behind her that Melody had not expected to see at all, and fear instantly gripped her. She was very frightened when she noticed the young gentleman, who suddenly appeared nearby, and was closely watching what was happening, causing anxiety and a sense of danger. Every day, Melody worked in the dark, watching the dressing room and keeping it in order, trying to prevent any trouble in time and keep Loretta calm. Melody assured herself that she had not stolen anything yet, trying to hide her fear of possible accusations from the Duke and keep her inner tension under control. Claude noticed her words and smiled, wondering why she said "for now." Watching Melody's reaction and trying to understand how much he could trust the girl, Melody was startled. Her words tumbled out, and she hastened to explain that everything had been misunderstood. It was just a slip of the tongue, not an admission of theft or cunning. She tried to explain that she understood the situation, but she didn't understand why there was a need to paint anything in the dressing room, feeling confused and with mixed feelings at the same time. Melody was glad that Claude believed her. It gave her a feeling of trust, and he, in turn, noted that he had noticed something, showing observation and attention to detail. He noticed that she often complained about little things, but always carried out requests flawlessly, demonstrating responsibility and the ability to pay attention to what is important. If she had decided to decorate something, it would have been a serious goal, aimed at the Duke's ring, and not at trifles, which once again confirmed her honesty and integrity. Melody began to explain that she was not a thief, and Claude laughed again, seeing her sincere excitement and efforts to justify herself, which calmed her heart a little. Claude's laughter was light and friendly, and Melody felt relieved to know that the Duke's attention and trust were providing her with protection and quiet support. He asked what she was doing there, because in her past life, Melody had read a book where Loretta was the main character, and the events seemed strangely familiar and predictable to her. One of Loretta's enemies wanted to ruin her dress, so Melody had to watch every night to prevent this, hiding her actions. She told him what was happening, and perhaps by chance, noticed how the assistants were gathering together. Sensing that something was wrong, she decided to listen. Soon she accidentally learned that these people were up to no good, and the anxiety in her chest intensified, forcing Melody to be extremely attentive and careful. Melody was afraid that he wouldn't believe her, but the Duke pointed out that even if it was true, she shouldn't take any risks, as she was still just a child, and the dangers could be serious. If she senses something is wrong, she should run away immediately and tell trusted adults to prevent trouble and protect herself. After that, he asked if she understood his words, and Melody nodded, realizing that her actions now depended on attentiveness and caution. Now it was better for her to return to herself, because she had just shared what was happening with someone she could rely on, and this gave her a feeling of security. He said that he would sort everything out, although she did not consider him an adult, because he was only 15 years old. But his behavior and words inspired trust and confidence. He was grateful to her for caring for his sweet little sister and understood that it was no longer a child's time. It was time for Melody to go to bed and save her strength for the next day. If she can't sleep, he will also be grateful for her help, because it makes it easier for him to watch the house and take care of the family without leaving everything to the adults. He threw his jacket over her and told her to follow him, assuring her that he would help her fall into a deep sleep in 10 minutes, which made Melody a little wary. She thought she'd simply be cut off, as she seemed to be taking up the Duke's time that he could have been spending with Loretta. Now the attention was entirely on her, and it was terrifying. Melody was worried that she was disturbing the Duke and distracting him from matters he could devote to Loretta or other duties, but he remained calm and confident. He showed that he understood the situation by deciding to spend time with Melody despite his fatigue, demonstrating that caring for her was more important to him than his own rest. Melody couldn't believe that the Duke was actually going to put her to bed, because such attention from the young Duke was unexpected and unusual for her. He prepared a drink and said that after she drank it, she would immediately lie down under the covers, assuring that in 10 minutes she would fall asleep without any problems, calmly and sweetly. This was Claude's special recipe that warms the belly, relaxes the body, and improves mood, helping even the most restless children and those who cannot sleep. Melody was surprised by the unusual drink. It was sweet, with honey, and she had never tried anything like it before, appreciating the unusual taste and the soft warmth it gave. She remarked that it was delicious and wondered why the Duke was wearing a suit at such an hour, assuming that he was going out somewhere, although in fact it was necessary for other reasons. He explained that his father was busy, so he went to the event in his place, had just returned home, and had not yet had time to change into his house clothes, maintaining a businesslike appearance. He also said that he would take care of security in advance, asking Higgins to change patrol times and increase security so that Melody could sleep peacefully. He quickly sorted out all the matters, acted calmly and confidently, demonstrating adult independence, and now did not look like a child at all, despite his age. She was very grateful to him and said that she would go now, feeling the care and attention that made her night calm and safe. Melody also remembered his jacket, which he left for her, and it seemed to her a sign of trust and willingness to help even in small things. He told her to keep the jacket, but to take it straight to the laundry in the morning, which was convenient for both of her and him, making it easier to organize household chores. She realized that he had given the jacket to be washed and warned her not to be late tomorrow, as she still had a lot of work to do with rewriting documents and other responsibilities. He knew he was beautiful, but he warned her not to stare at him too hard, as it made him uncomfortable, and Melody tried to keep her distance. He thought he was right, but she countered that he wasn't, insisting that she wasn't looking at him too closely and was trying to be respectful. Claude was so mean that it seemed almost unbearable, but at the same time, his attention made Melody feel cared for and protected. But when she opened the door, she saw that her clothes, bow, and hat were ruined, which caused Melody mixed feelings of alarm and sadness. They found out that she was monitoring the dressing room every night and decided to take out their anger on her by leaving traces of irritation on the girl's things. It could have happened to Loretta, but it had been minor, and Melody breathed a sigh of relief, knowing the worst had been averted and her anxiety had subsided. Melody had dealt with other people's anger before, so she knew not to get too upset, but to remain calm and act with restraint, not to give in to panic. The elders expressed their gratitude for the Duke's hospitality, noting his attention and respect for them, which spoke of his wisdom and concern for everyone present in the hall. The Duke asked again if they were about to leave, showing impatience, and the men took the subtle hint that it was time to hurry so as not to delay important family matters. One of the men reported that the elder was concerned about the upcoming events and was worried about the consequences, since any delay could affect the reputation and safety of the family. They noted that the Duke would not make rash decisions, but would carefully weigh all the circumstances and consequences before acting, demonstrating prudence and caution. The men understood that if rumors spread about the Duke's visit to a low-born child, the Baldwin family would be ridiculed and the gossip would cause humiliation and stress. The Duke looked sternly at the men, and one of them immediately felt fear, sensing the seriousness of his words and the penetrating gaze, not daring to object. He asked again who would dare to laugh at the Baldwin family, increasing the pressure on those present and making them feel the importance of their behavior and the caution of their actions. At that time, the man did not answer directly, realizing that the aristocrats of the capital could be cruel and caustic, and any thoughtless word could cause ridicule and problems for the Duke's family. The Duke ordered that any rumors should be reported to him immediately and that people should be brought to him. He would personally listen to everyone who dared to bring news. The man explained that their concern for the Duke was genuine. They were worried about who else could care for him from the heart and support him without self-interest. Melody watched the proceedings, realizing that the situation was extremely serious and could easily turn into trouble if someone acted incorrectly. Everyone present was amazed by Loretta's appearance. Her appearance caused surprise and confusion. No one expected that the girl would appear in such a state. The Duke noticed the damaged bow on her head, which immediately attracted attention and caused discontent. The symbol of order had been violated. The maids looked at Loretta with incomprehension, not understanding why she had chosen this particular beau and why she was behaving so provocatively in the Duke's house. One of the men noted with surprise that she was wearing something strange, not believing that such a thing could be allowed in a house where the Duke kept order. Loretta seemed to have forgotten where she lived, and in the goodness of the Duke's heart, she dared to behave provocatively without fear of consequences, which irritated those present. The man warned her not to deface the symbol of the Duke's house and to stop displaying the haughty expression on her face that offended everyone in the room. The maid sternly warned Melody not to approach, and the man burst into a shout, demanding an immediate apology from his masters. The atmosphere was tense, and every glance evoked alarm. If this had been an ordinary family, Melody wouldn't have paid any attention to the maid's words, and might not have even shown up. Everything around her seemed simple and understandable, without any unnecessary threat. But now everything was different, and Melody felt a rare anger and irritation. Never before had she felt such an internal turmoil when circumstances forced her to act against her will. Claude's words came to mind about not panicking and the importance of remaining calm even in the most difficult and confusing situations, which now seemed almost impossible. The man noted that all of this was expected, since the criminal's daughter lacks conscience and can behave provocatively without regard for other people's emotions or rules of decency. Loretta was no ordinary commoner. She was described as an evil, cunning, and rude girl, which inspired anxiety and made everyone around her watch her every move with caution. The man loudly declared that it was necessary to act immediately, getting rid of the threat, before the situation got completely out of control and entered a dangerous phase, threatening everyone present. The Duke interrupted the shouting, showing his irritation and fatigue from the unnecessary noise and complaints, making it clear that he had had enough and would not tolerate the chaos around him. He covered Melody with himself like a protective shield, protecting her from attacks, harsh words, and the tense atmosphere, creating a sense of safety in the midst of chaos and threat. Melody was surprised that the Duke became her protector and a middle ground between her and men, allowing her to feel at least a little confidence and support in such an unpleasant situation. She realized the situation she was in, that her mother was a criminal, and that she now lived in the Duke's house, completely dependent on his will and surroundings. This awareness made her cautious in all her actions, since any false move could displease the Duke and deprive her of the support on which she depended. That is why Melody would never have ruined the Duke's gift, understanding the importance of this gesture and the trust with which he treated her and her concerns. Her stay here was entirely provided for by the Duke's generosity, and a mistake could cost her dearly, so she watched her every step, trying not to attract unnecessary attention. The Duke began shouting, expressing doubt that Melody appreciated the value of the gift, and questioning who would believe her if she suddenly ruined something. This would not have happened if she had been more attentive to what was happening and had better control of the situation, noticing the smallest details around herself and Loretta. She couldn't even imagine that an adult would enter Loretta's nursery to deliberately ruin the beau, disturbing the child's peace and safety. Melody realized that if she had known about this in advance, she would have acted much more prudently and carefully, avoiding any risks and unforeseen situations. The Duke turned to Melody, asking if she herself had suffered any harm in this unpleasant situation, and if she had suffered any harm from the incident. Melody replied that she was fine, apologized for what happened, and acknowledged her responsibility for any consequences, even if she was not directly at fault. The Duke said he no longer wished to hear her apologies, emphasizing that the situation was under control, and that the most important thing now was to restore order and peace in the house. He looked at the men, sternly pointing out the unacceptability of their behavior, and demanded to know who had allowed themselves to be rude to his guest, emphasizing the importance of respect in the house. Melody noted that she was completely fine, and there was no reason to worry, trying to reassure everyone that the situation had already been resolved and did not require intervention. Someone clearly harbored a childish grudge against Melody, but she did not lose anything and was not hurt, despite the hidden anger and ill will of those around her, remaining calm. So Melody asked the Duke not to punish the men, trying to manage the situation in such a way that the elders would remain in his debt and understand the importance of her influence. It was unlikely that such an opportunity would ever arise again, and Melody clearly understood that she had to use this moment carefully, acting thoughtfully and without haste. Debt was one of her ways to control people, although it remained unknown how Melody knew about such subtleties of power and skillfully used them. The Duke said he understood her point of view and asked the men if they thought only those of equal status should stay in his house, testing their reaction. He listened carefully to their words and eventually demanded that they leave the house immediately, maintaining a delicate balance of power and dignity. The men stated that he might have gone out, but apologized on behalf of the entire group, showing respect for the Duke and acknowledging his authority in the house. The Duke asked if he should show how he treated people of unequal status, leaving the question open and not giving a direct answer to the provocation. After this, the men abruptly headed towards the carriage and drove away, leaving Melody with a feeling of relief, but at the same time with a slight worry that the situation could repeat itself. The maids suggested that she return to the house quickly, making sure that Melody did not remain outside in the cold and did not feel lonely at that moment. In the evening, Melody was glad that everything had been resolved calmly, and the internal tension gradually disappeared, leaving room for light confidence and a calm mood. She had met with Hilling's housekeeper earlier, and she was very angry that they were causing trouble again by forgetting to take their medication, possibly replacing it with other substances. Melody's manner of speech suddenly changed, but she felt even more comfortable this way. She adjusted her bow and hat, giving her appearance a neater look. Melody was delighted with how beautifully the housekeeper sewed the bow, noting the care and precision of the work. Hilling couldn't understand why the Duke had bought such a small bow. She was almost blinded by the fine workmanship, astonished by the intricacy of the details. Her eyes were no longer the same as in her youth, but tomorrow she planned to adjust her hat to restore harmony to her image. Restoring the hat to its original shape was difficult, but Hilling knew the result would still be beautiful in its own way. Everyone was very worried about Melody, and it seemed like it was time to sit down and read a book with Loretta, to take their minds off their worries and do something important and interesting. Melody recalled the words that the elder's servants had spoken to her, and it gave her an unpleasant feeling of slight anxiety and fatigue, as if something unsettling hung in the air. If Melody had known what these people were capable of, she would have acted more cautiously. Everything looked pleasant, but inside, an unpleasant and alarming feeling remained. Then she decided not to think about it, because the housekeeper had put a lot of effort into fixing the bow, making it neat and beautiful, adding a little warmth to the day with her care. In truth, Melody liked the bow in its original form, with its natural ease and simplicity that seemed so easy and natural for a child's play. She felt very sad now, and Melody wanted to cry, feeling at the same time a mixture of gratitude for the attention and slight sadness, as if her heart was filled with conflicting feelings. The Duke gave her the bow twice, and she wanted it to remain that way forever, as a reminder of a moment of care and attention that warmed her heart and remained in her memory. Melody began to cry and ask for forgiveness, sitting in her room, expressing sincere remorse and regret for what had happened, as if the environment itself helped her feelings to open up. After a while, she heard a rustling sound behind the door, causing a slight tension and anticipation of who could be outside, and her heart began to beat faster, as if anticipating something important. She didn't understand who was there, because she couldn't show herself with such a tear-stained face, and this added to her anxiety, caution, and a desire to hide from prying eyes in order to maintain personal space. If Melody remains quiet, they might think she has fallen asleep, and no one will notice her emotional state, leaving her tears and worries in the safety and comfort of her room. Then she heard the maid telling Loretta that Melody had probably fallen asleep, calming the atmosphere, hiding the girl's tears, and adding a touch of calm even to the troubled house. Melody realized Loretta had come because she was worried. She wasn't afraid to see her tear-stained face. She was already used to such moments. At such moments, Loretta would sweetly hug Melody with her little arms, and Melody would feel a warm affection and care that warmed her heart. After this, Melody opened the doors and called Loretta, expecting her to rush to her, as usually happened during their meetings together. But behind the door, she saw a young gentleman, whose appearance came as a surprise, and caused her slight surprise and bewilderment. Melody asked where Loretta was, trying to understand why her companion hadn't appeared right away, and feeling a slight worry for the girl. The young gentleman apologized and explained that he had simply been cunning, trying to hide his true intentions and not draw unnecessary attention to his actions at that moment. Melody quickly ran to the door, closed it, and asked why he came, not understanding why he was here at this particular time and what made him appear. He apologized again and admitted that he had been very worried and that anxiety and worry had caused him to act impulsively without thinking about the consequences of his actions. Melody had been pretending to be fine all day today, but Loretta was the first to notice the hidden sadness behind her smile. Realizing that the girl was trying to hide her true emotions, Melody asked again, and the young gentleman noted that Loretta had said she looked sad, which confirmed her own worries and made her watch her more closely. He wanted to comfort her, but Melody didn't understand why he came and why he cared about her so much, because his behavior seemed strange and incomprehensible in this situation. He admitted that he felt awkward talking about it, and his words sounded timid, as if he was afraid to reveal his true feelings and show his weaknesses in front of her. She opened the door and said that it was obvious he was just jealous, hinting at the care and attention he showed and how it affected her condition. He noticed that she already understood him well and handed Melody a handkerchief, demonstrating gentleness and attentiveness to her emotions, trying to support her with at least a small gesture. She said that he should be more careful then, but he didn't care and just smiled slightly, not changing his behavior and continuing to show concern in his own way. After this, Melody asked where Mrs. Loretta was, wanting to know if the girl had calmed down and was ready to meet with them to understand how best to proceed. Claude noticed that Loretta seemed to have calmed down a bit, calling for Mrs. again. This gave him hope that the meeting would proceed calmly and without alarm. He also noted that Loretta never called him by his first name, even by accident, which Melody found both a curious and slightly amusing observation. Afterwards, he said that he was only joking and added that Loretta was especially dear to him, demonstrating the depth of his affection for the girl. He asked if she was feeling better, but Melody was crying so hard that she started hiccuping, making the moment both touching and slightly awkward. He said it was sweet, and his words came out softly, like a gentle encouragement that warmed both Melody's and Loretta's hearts. He was eager to meet sweet Loretta, feeling impatient and wanting to spend as much time with her as possible that day. Melody was probably also looking forward to his appearance, and he noted that her gaze was sacred, as if she did not fully believe what was happening around her. She noticed that he had already led her once, and now she watched warily, trying to understand his intentions and following his every step with caution. He said that he had to keep his promise, so this time she could trust him completely and not doubt his words or actions. She asked what promise he was talking about. The young gentleman reminded her that the road didn't lead to the mistress's chambers and asked if she had forgotten their conversation the previous day. He opened the doors and Melody was shocked, not expecting to see what appeared before her eyes at that moment, and completely changed her ideas. Before them was a library full of books and silence, where a special atmosphere of knowledge, comfort, and quiet thoughtfulness reigned, which was difficult to convey in words. He assumed it was her first time there, and she confirmed this by asking why they had come to the library now, at the most unexpected moment of the day. Claude replied that it was a strange question, because tomorrow she couldn't be late, as she had a lot of work and important notes to rewrite. She couldn't believe that he was even human. She was so surprised by his behavior and habits, which seemed unusual and strange. She said she hated him a little for how he could be so demanding and caring at the same time. He told her to calm down, noting that there wasn't much work today, and as soon as she was done, they would go to Loretta's. Usually, the notes were left on the bookshelf. Okay, no need to think about it, Melody decided, intending to quickly sort everything out and go to bed after a busy day. He told her to come up and write her name in the book, demonstrating that every step in the library was important and required attention. Melody noticed that this book was special. She knew she would leave her notes and traces of her presence in it, and this gave the library a special significance. The Duke emphasized the need to hurry and celebrate today's date. He wanted her actions to be meaningful and to discipline her work, making it meaningful. He noted her tenacity and hard work. Melody felt respected, understanding that diligence and attention to detail are always appreciated, especially in such tasks and responsibilities. As Melody signed the book, she felt it become her own. A slight sense of pride filled her, as if she had taken possession of something important and unique to herself. It was a pleasant feeling, like a gift. She felt trusted and cared for, because this symbolic gesture was meant for her personally and came from the Duke. The Duke explained that this was impossible without a preservation charm. He added that the book must be returned when the charm expires, otherwise the magical effect will be lost. The Duke considered shorthand to be an important pursuit. He believed that recordings of notable people and their achievements could be useful for teaching materials and future research. Melody realized that so far she had only painted self-portraits and weather notes. She considered them trivial, and she didn't consider their historical value. The Duke said that weather was important. It influenced many things. He himself wasn't gifted enough to change the course of an era, so such simple notes were of great value to history. All documents were carefully sorted by time and place, making them easily accessible for study of the past and further research by future generations. One day, someone will appear for whom these organized records of the past will be invaluable. They will be able to study them and benefit from them, understanding the significance of each event. After the Duke's words, he handed Melody the book, placing it carefully on the table. It felt like an opportunity to touch something important and personal to history. Melody noticed where the commas were and where the spaces were. She realized she needed to place them correctly to make the text look complete and precise, without unnecessary haste. She walked over and carefully placed the comma in its place. Each of her actions fit perfectly into the structure of the text, and she felt a sense of accomplishment. Afterwards, Claude turned to her and pointed out that when someone does research, they use other people's records as a reference, drawing on the knowledge and experience of the past. He asked her to guess what would be written at the end of the work, and hinted that her name would be included there, as if predicting her fate. Of course, this book could be useful to someone in the future, although Melody understood that she herself did not belong to this family, and her participation was surprising. He said that it was sacred. It was written down and preserved in books, and that this information was considered true, regardless of its origin or personal doubts. This meant that, according to the records, she would marry a man from their family, and this seemed an inevitable part of the future predetermined by the book. Melody was immediately frightened, and he was surprised by her reaction, not expecting that the news of marriage would cause her such a strong shock. He noted that his sensible little sister would have said that she wanted this, as if her thoughts coincided with what the book predicted. Melody said that someone like her could not marry into the Duke's family, but he replied that lineage did not matter when it came to true love. Could it be that she didn't love Loretta, he wondered? And Melody pointed out that this was impossible, because she wanted to live with Loretta forever, completely surrendering to her feelings. When he asked her again if she really wanted to live forever, she felt a sense of déjà vu, as if past memories had intertwined with the present and given her a strange sensation. She felt that she might have said something wrong, and a little anxiety came over her, because she did not want to make a mistake in an important conversation about the future. But then he smiled and said that everything was clear now, as if all her doubts had dissolved and the understanding of the situation had become obvious to both of them. Melody said that she could not marry him because Mrs. would have her own partner, and this decision seemed final and logical in their life. He asked Melody again, and she noted that it was too early to discuss such things, since the future was not yet determined, and much could change. He noticed that there was a feeling that she already knew who this partner would be, as if her intuition was telling her the answers ahead of time. Melody said he was just imagining things, and he replied that they had to go now, hinting at the need to move on and not linger. She asked where they were going, and he said they were going to see his sister Loretta, who was waiting for them to arrive, and was full of impatience. He had mentioned earlier that Loretta was expecting Melody, and this added to the sense of importance of their visit and the anticipation of meeting the girl. Loretta was delighted and asked Melody if she had received her gift, looking sweet and innocent as she inquired about every detail with curiosity. Loretta noted that her brother had mentioned the gift and that she needed to wait a little, as the surprise required patience and timing. He started talking about marriage and the magic of preservation so suddenly that Melody didn't understand anything, and all the words seemed strange and inconsistent to her. The book was now protected by a magic spell and stood neatly on the shelf, and Melody felt real joy at this moment. Loretta wondered if Melody liked her gift. Watching her every reaction and smile, Melody smiled and mentally noted that she really liked everything she received and that it brought her warmth. Loretta laughed, and then, slightly embarrassed, smiled too, feeling the joy of Melody's reaction. Melody absolutely loved the gift, so Loretta was genuinely delighted and beaming with happiness. Loretta rushed to Melody's side and mentally noted that if she was happy, then she felt joy herself. It was such a touching moment when Melody could hug such a small and sweet girl without looking back. Melody wanted time to stop, but at the same time, the Duke was thinking about her need for a certain status. The butler believed that the Duke had in mind someone who could provide Melody with support for the sake of formality. The Duke confirmed that many people want to get Melody's attention. He did not expect that there would be so many. However, all the contenders wanted to use it to have control over the Duke and influence his decisions. The butler offered to adopt Melody personally, but Ronnie was categorically against such a move and intervened. The issue turned out to be complex, so there was no point in rushing to make a decision. The situation required caution and attention. Each appointed slave trader had already carried out her duties, and the process was almost complete. Prisoners had the right to have their last wish fulfilled before their execution. Melody asked for permission to be with her daughter until her death, cherishing every moment with her. She also clarified that she would like this to happen within the prison walls, next to Loretta. The Duke called Melody to him, and she apologized, asking him not to worry about her mother. The Duke said that he had promised to inform Melody of the exact date of the execution when everything was finally determined. If she allows her guardian to speak, he will be quick to assure her that Melody is not obliged to fulfill her mother's request. It was, however, discussed that the last will of the condemned person should usually be carried out, and this was important to remember. Since the request was for someone else, the situation was different, and Melody had the right to refuse to participate. If she wanted to ease her mother's sins, Melody didn't necessarily have to help with that. The decision was hers. She could already feel her mother mentally saying that she wanted to meet her one last time before she died. Melody understood that her mother did not want to see her, but only wanted to reassure herself, fearing the unknown of life after death. The Duke said that if she wanted a meeting, everything could be arranged by helicopter, and Melody should think carefully about this decision. Melody remembered that last time she realized that her mother did not love her, and despite all her efforts did not bring results. Then she looked at her mother as if she were a bag of coins, and her mother's eyes sparkled with greed and coldness, as if she was expecting a mistake. Melody thought her mother should be happy, so she tried to cook and clean, hoping to improve her mood. But it was all in vain, so Melody decided that she wouldn't be happier with her mother, and chose to stay put, not wanting to experience pain again. After these words, the Duke expressed gratitude, appreciating her decision and courage in choosing her own path. He admitted that he appreciated her because in such a situation she chose herself, without giving in to other people's pressure. Even the adults pondered the dilemma for several days, but Melody made a decision quickly and confidently. She had already suffered enough wounds on her body and soul, and although being human is strange, even in difficulties, one can find the strength to grow an inner pearl. He agreed, and Melody noted that she had recently been to the library where her notes were now kept, and that it made her happy. It was a happy moment. She felt as if she were dissolving into the lines and becoming part of the bookshelves. That is why she decided to sign the document with her own hand, maintaining her current determination and confidence. Once she signed the document, she would emerge from her mother's shadow, demonstrating her independent decision. The Duke was pleased with such determination, seeing that she was confident in her choice and ready to act. He only told her to prepare the document, and tomorrow she would be able to set off on her journey without delay. Claude reminded that there is no need to rush, emphasizing that the decision must be well thought out. But, noticing that Melody had forgotten to put on her gloves, he noted her inattention, although delicately, without condemnation. They looked too tight, and Melody even felt sorry to put on the lace gloves that at least gave her a little dignity. The gloves were actually great. Claude's father had given them to him for his last birthday, and they had meaning to him. When she picked up the glove, it looked natural and beautiful, highlighting the attention to detail and precision. Melody asked if everything was all right with the Duke, concerned about his condition and mood. Claude said that the Duke was fine. There was just a slight weakness in his body, probably due to fatigue after the servant's reproaches. Melody believed that everything that happened was her fault, but the guy calmed her down, explaining that in this situation, she was not to blame for anything and should not blame herself. Young Vengeance didn't have to worry about such events, because he would take everything upon himself and settle the situation on behalf of the Duke, protecting her interests. She noticed that he was treating her like a child again, even though she was only 4 years older, and this irritated her a little and made her think. His actions were not at all childish, but mature and decisive, and Melody wondered when she herself would become as mature and confident as he was. Melody tried to fit his glove onto her hand. Claude calmly remarked that there was no rush and that she wouldn't be an adult for another few birthdays. The young man inquired about her exact date of birth and carefully took the glove, as if testing whether she was willing to share such personal details with him. Melody honestly admitted she didn't know her birth date. This confused the girl a little, as such information seemed very important to the Duke. Claude thought for a moment and realized he'd hurt her feelings with his questions. He hadn't meant to hurt her, and his surprise was genuine. Melody smiled warmly and informed him that her personal holiday was in the spring. She spoke easily and casually, as if revealing a small, sweet secret. The girl was born at the time when yellow flowers bloom. She chose this bright day as her birthday, feeling a special connection with the awakening of nature. Claude was deeply shocked that she genuinely didn't know the exact figures. His amazement was mingled with keen interest and a hint of concern for the fate of young Melody. The guy noted that her holiday comes right after a cold winter. It's a wonderful time of renewal, when all nature around finally awakens to life. After these words, the young Duke was informed of his arrival at his destination. What seemed like a distant event happened too quickly and was entirely unexpected for everyone. Melody was extremely surprised at how quickly they arrived. It was as if the road had shortened itself, and she barely had time to prepare for this meeting. Claude silently handed the official letter to the knight. He was to check and ensure everything was prepared for their further actions and important meetings. After some time, the faithful knight reported that the inspection was complete. Now they could continue their journey without fear of any hidden troubles. Melody suddenly felt someone's heavy gaze on her. She looked out the window and was shocked, as the gaze was anything but friendly and unsettling. The knight glared at her, and the girl became terrified. She couldn't understand the reason for such hostility, as she had done absolutely nothing wrong. Claude couldn't understand what was going on. Peering into the Duke's carriage so rudely was unacceptable. Such behavior from his subordinate seemed extremely impolite to him. Then Melody realized that she recognized the familiar hair, and this feeling increased her curiosity and somewhat calmed her fear of the unknown person. When the knight fully revealed himself before her, Melody recognized Isaiah and immediately realized that in front of her was an old acquaintance with whom she had shared memories. Isaiah greeted little Melody, his smile warm, as if there was no time or distance between them, just a pleasant feeling of recognition and friendship. A few years ago, before he left, a similar situation happened when he noticed Melody in tears and immediately approached her to understand the reason for her sadness. He saw that the little girl had been hurt and came over to find out who had hurt her, showing concern and a willingness to protect her from injustice. He brought some boy and asked if he was the reason for her tears, demonstrating the principle of justice and not allowing the weak to be offended. He always stood up for the little girl because he believed it was important to uphold justice and not leave the offended without protection, especially when it concerned a child. He threw the boy to Melody and suggested that she do the same to him, so that he would understand that hurting others is unacceptable and that the consequences are inevitable. All this was done so that he would not bother her anymore, and Melody got a sense of power and control, albeit in a small situation, to protect herself. After all, it was this boy who had thrown her shoe onto the chestnut tree branch, and now he needed to understand that such actions were unacceptable and had consequences. So when Isaiah told Melody to throw his shoe away, It was a fair punishment, since the guy had previously been bragging about the shoes he got for his birthday. Everyone was amazed at how brightly these things shone. Their shine seemed to attract the gaze of everyone in the room, leaving a feeling of surprise and admiration. At first glance, it was obvious that the quality of the others' clothes left much to be desired. Their clothes seemed cheap, and this was offensively noticeable to everyone. Melody felt a twinge of discomfort and involuntarily glanced at her shoes. The comparison with someone else's glitter only evoked a mild, bitter disappointment in herself. Isaiah silently removed his shoes and handed them to Melody. He seemed to be inviting her to experience that same feeling of luxury that everyone around him was so excitedly discussing. Isaiah urged her to act quickly, as the adults would be arriving soon. Then they would both have to bear the consequences if they lingered. But Melody simply handed the expensive shoes to the other guy, indicating that he should take them himself, not wanting to prolong this strange and awkward situation. The guy instantly grabbed his shoes and ran away. Isaiah tried to stop him, but it was too late to intervene. Melody calmly explained that she didn't want to hurt others in return. Even if they had hurt her before, she preferred to remain honest with herself. Isaiah countered that you can't be too kind. Even if it's unpleasant for her, she needs to take action. Otherwise, these insolent people will continue to pester her. After that, he firmly promised that he would always protect her. He would not allow anyone to harm her as long as she was nearby and in need. If someone offends her, she should immediately inform him so that he can protect her in time and prevent trouble. Melody said that his mother would not like it, but Isaiah assured him that a knight had a duty to protect people, even if it seemed strange to his parents. Melody noted that his mother wanted him to become a doctor, not a knight, but the boy only smiled, remaining true to his ideals. She thought that Isaiah was very strange, but funny. His actions and words made her smile slightly and feel trust. The boy smiled back, feeling the desire to protect this little girl from anyone who could do her even the slightest harm. He took off his shoe and told her to go home quickly, caring for her safety and urging her to be careful. But she didn't want to take the shoes and tried to stop him, although he had already run away, leaving her thoughtful and slightly confused. He said she didn't need to know where he went, and that evening, Melody thought about where Isaiah might have gone, worrying about him. Melody sincerely hoped that he had returned home safely. Her heart was deeply worried for his safety, and she desperately wanted everything to be calm. Suddenly, the girl heard a strange rustling noise right outside the window. The sound instantly alerted her and made her raise her head, trying to discern the source of the noise in the silence. She became extremely curious about who exactly could be there at such a late hour. She listened carefully and peered into the thick darkness beyond the cold glass. Suddenly, her own shoe was handed to her through the window. This sudden appearance of the shoe left Melody greatly surprised by its precision and strange timing. She immediately recognized her belongings and was deeply moved. She had never expected to receive such a gift or such a mysterious token from anyone she knew. Quickly opening the window, she saw Isaiah running away. His swift departure left behind a pleasant feeling of mild excitement and long-awaited relief. The boy continued to run as fast as before, wearing only one shoe. He was in a great hurry and completely oblivious to everything around him, as if the whole world had frozen in place for him. Melody smiled warmly in response to this gesture. She had never met such sincere and kind people who left a mark on her heart and gave her a feeling of lightness. She jumped out of the carriage straight into his arms, overwhelmed with joy. She noted that the young man had grown considerably in that time and looked completely different. Isaiah noticed with a smile that she was still very small. To him, she looked almost unchanged, as if time moved extremely slowly and carefully for her. But she insisted that she, too, had grown up and was no longer a baby. She confidently argued that growing up is not just about height, but also about one's inner state. Isaiah said that she still pouts and wrinkles her chin, so it can't be said that she has matured, because her habits have remained the same and recognizable. Claude asked the second night if he could take their new recruits for a while, since he seemed to already be familiar with the guests and knew how to handle them. Claude also asked to give them a place where they could stay for a while they were here, so that everything would go smoothly and without any unnecessary problems. Claude gave instructions that they were to be allowed to speak with her, after which they were to proceed to the carriage in an orderly and organized manner. Isaiah noted that since the gentleman had made the offer, he would not refuse, considering it an honor and an opportunity to fulfill the request of a worthy aristocrat. He entered the carriage and asked Melody to move over a little so that he could get more comfortable, trying not to disturb the general order and decorum. Claude was surprised how one could ask a lady to move, because this knight seemed to have no manners or habits of a gentleman at all, which irritated him a little. Isaiah was grateful for the ride his master gave him, appreciating the attention and care that was shown in small things, but meant a lot. Melody said that Isaiah was stupid because he was a young master and reminded him to mind his manners, since he was a high-ranking aristocrat in front of them. Isaiah asked why she was with him, and Melody replied that she owed a lot to Duke Baldwin, who had provided significant help and support in the past. When they arrived, the knight was amazed to see how much chocolate lay before them, as such a quantity seemed almost unbelievable for an ordinary person. Isaiah noticed that the gentleman could not even imagine how much the knights lacked sweets, and expressed a desire to take some for his comrades to share the joy. Melody was embarrassed for him, but the master said that he could take as much as he wanted, allowing joy without limits and encouraging generosity. Isaiah was simply delighted by this and was very happy, because the opportunity to share pleasure with friends filled his soul with real joy. Melody noted that he hadn't changed at all and still gave out treats to his friends, remaining the same sincere and kind person she knew him to be. He remarked that it was precisely to remain himself that he wanted to become a knight. Then he knelt down, a light cloud floating above him. He noted that he was late in expressing his gratitude to the young master, but still wanted to express his respect and appreciation for his concern. Claude asked curiously what exactly Isaiah was expressing his gratitude for. He watched the boy's behavior with a slight smile, waiting for an honest answer. Isaiah felt grateful for Claude's sincere concern for Melody. He believed that saying thank you was the polite and appropriate thing to do in this situation. Claude found this young man amusing and strange. He couldn't understand how he dared to thank the Duke for decisions he had made himself, or who the boy even thought he was. Melody stared intently at the back of Isaiah's head, lost in thought. Her thoughts wandered chaotically between the hazy past and the present, the real present. Suddenly, the girl decisively grabbed the folded newspaper. A loud pop sounded, causing everyone present to jump in surprise. Previously, Mrs. Merlin had said that when they met, she should give her son a good smack on the back of the head. This was her way of punishing him for his long silence and her anxiety. The scoundrel hadn't sent a single message from home yet. Melody sternly ordered him to sit down at the table immediately and quickly prepare a warm letter for his mother. She added that the young man couldn't even imagine how much Mrs. Merlin cared for him. The doctor's maternal concern was truly deep and sincere. Isaiah muttered in response that she was crazy. He was afraid to write to his mother after he flatly refused to become a doctor and ran away from home. He thought his mother would be disappointed to learn of his service as a knight, but Melody countered that she was already upset, as her own son had completely stopped writing to her. The boy reluctantly agreed to send at least a short message. He seriously doubted he could find the right words and express his thoughts correctly. Melody told him to write more, because he definitely has a lot to share and talk about the events that have happened recently. He asked what exactly to write about, since he had never written letters before and had no experience in such matters. He drew attention to himself and said that he could ask Claude for help because he knew how to express his thoughts in writing clearly and competently. Melody apologized for bothering him, even though they had already come a long way and been through a lot because of this situation. Claude noted that she hadn't bothered him at all. There was no need to worry. The meeting with Isaiah had only distracted her for a while. She understood that the journey to prison would take a lot of time, but he agreed to write the letter, taking on another responsibility. But Claude noted that there was no problem, since he still had 2 free weeks to help and finish everything on time. The letter was requested by a guest of their home, Melody, who wanted Isaiah's care and attention to be reflected in action. The main thing was that Melody did not succumb to the influence of this young gentleman, because how her training would go and how much control she would have in the new conditions depended on it. If she behaved like him, the consequences could impact her training and development. She felt somewhat displeased with Isaiah. His manner seemed too harsh. Melody noticed that Isaiah turned out to be more well-mannered and reserved than she was, and this surprised her a little, because she was used to being independent and free. Isaiah explained that the master placed great importance on developing politeness in knights, and that it was this quality that made them worthy servants. The knight warned that if Isaiah ever spoke rudely to the duke, he would be punished immediately upon his return, and this was a new rule for Melody. He explained that when you come to someone's home, it is customary to bring a gift or something important or beloved to show respect and attention. Melody felt grateful and slightly embarrassed because she did not expect such a thoughtful gesture, which came as a surprise to her. At home, they often went for walks together, looking for large and beautiful forest-tailed trees and spending the whole day playing, enjoying communication and the nature around them. He had come a long way to meet her, and Melody felt a little embarrassed, realizing his efforts and care were directed only at her. Isaiah noted that it wouldn't hurt her to learn to be stubborn, as this quality would help her defend her decisions and be independent. The girl understood that his early visit was connected with his desire to learn, because he himself had to improve and fulfill his promises, and time allowed for this. He reminded her that he had promised to help write letters to her mother, and since the knight had promised to do so, he was obliged to keep his word and teach Melody properly. He informed Melody that she would have to miss tomorrow's training because she had work to do that would take up most of the day, and that the meeting with her had been rescheduled for another time. He suggested discussing everything they hadn't managed to touch on last time, as the day gave them the opportunity to calmly pay attention to every aspect of their communication. He noted that he thought Melody had things to do too, but he wasn't sure, which made him a little uneasy because he wanted to spend time together. In addition, he had strong doubts about Isaiah's behavior, and these doubts added tension, forcing Melody to be attentive to his every word and action. The maid informed the young master and Melody that Madame Loretta would like to meet the guest, showing attention and care for the visit. Loretta began to cry because she was not allowed to, her tears betraying her genuine disappointment and desire to participate in the game. She just wanted to play tag, feeling the usual childish desire for fun and movement that was impossible to ignore. Claude immediately took her in his arms and told her not to cry, because in this mansion she could do almost everything, feeling support and care. She could have expressed gratitude to any of them. Melody thoughtfully replied that she had indeed encountered many kind people along her life. The interviewer suggested she focus on the most recent changes. It would be worth choosing someone who had shown her particular kindness over the past few days. Those around him guessed the boy was referring to himself. However, Melody, contrary to expectations, decided to dedicate her touching letter to the charming little girl, Loretta. After some time, Loretta and Ronnie became enthusiastic about their hobby. They wandered the surrounding area together, diligently collecting forest pine cones for their amusement. In addition to this, Melody decided to take on the important responsibility of delivering his personal letters on time to make life easier for everyone around her. He was extremely curious whether she had actually come to visit her mother. Fortunately, his fears were unfounded, and the purpose of her visit was entirely different. Isaiah countered that revenge could be achieved in many different ways. If she simply didn't show up for the meeting, the woman would go mad from her own powerlessness and loneliness.